Look, I just want to get into the targeting first and get it out of the way, and then I'll get into the simulation. So I'm going to jump ahead in that presentation a little bit, but I want to open it up. So what I want to do is we'll go live, and then we can open up.
Live now.
Okay, well, let's open up the presentation, and we'll start there after we do an intro and stuff. So let's.
Okay, I'm going to hit the intro, and we're going to get started. Sorry, guys, for the late start. You know. The late start. I'm really sorry for the late start. It's just targeting and stuff, you know, honestly. And I put this button up every time now, guys. You know, subscribe, whether you're on YouTube or you're on Rumble, and remember to hit the notification bell so you know when I go live, and you know, like also when I when I go live, and then also, you know, like hit the thumbs up button on YouTube and on Rumble. And I'm really excited about my guest today. I have with me my good friend Nathan Ciszek, who I got to meet in person at the Full Disclosure Now conference. And yeah, there he is. And you know, he's a MILAB whistleblower. And you know, did they delete my notes too? Oh my God, there's no way. Yeah, they deleted my notes too. Oh my God. Wow.
Well, I'm a disgruntled disclosure activist who's targeted with technology by NSA and other goon squads, and it's a combination of that, old computers, and StreamYard, which is a pretty potent combination, and of course the shadow banning on YouTube.
Yeah, they're doing everything they can to mess us up tonight, man. They're deleting stuff. I had my notes up here that I was gonna take for the show and everything, and like, they're gone, dude. They're just absolutely just disappeared. Like nothing. You know what I mean? Like it's actually, you know.
Start writing it down and that's, you know, I know better. If I ever do a presentation, I'm going to have a written version of it. So if the real one gets deleted, at least I have something to go with.
Yeah. Well, I have my notes here. I'm just going to pull them up real quick, and I'll do a proper intro. So, yeah, tonight, guys, it's going to be an amazing episode. I got my good friend Nathan Ciszek with me, and tonight we're going to be getting into targeting, simulation, reality hacks, timeline edits. I have MILAB whistleblower Nathan Ciszek. He joins me for this talk called "The Source Field and the Simulation." We'll dig into targeting, NPCs, soul contracts, timeline manipulation, AI overlays, and how to opt out of the engineered reality we find ourselves in. And a little bit about the episode. Nate's a MILAB whistleblower. He returns from an advanced decode on targeting, how selected individuals are flagged, profiled, and entrained, and how this connects to a larger simulation network, source field overlays, NPC constructs, probability rails, and timeline edits. We'll map the playbook, surveillance, behavioral nudges, engineered synchronicities, isolation, spiritual fragmentation, and pivot to exiting the maze. Sovereign tech for nervous system destabilization, energetic hygiene, and reclaiming timeline authority. And yeah, and with all that said, I'd like to give him a big warm welcome back to the show. Nate, thanks so much for coming back on, man. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Rob. And I have to say, with that list, only an AI could think that it could be possible to put all of that in a 90-minute or 2-hour episode. But we can scratch the surface and start a little, you know, we get a good foundational start here. So, okay. I want to talk about targeting first. So what I want to do is let's go through this process, and hopefully my slides show up here. So do you remember the protocol, Rob? Because I remember we had to go into the...
remember, you're going to share your entire screen, right? Well, and then you're going to toggle over to the...
Yeah. I got audio on. Let's see. So I'm going to go over here where it says entire screen.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go into, I would assume, my PowerPoint. So let's just see here. Were you able to see the PowerPoint when I did that?
Yeah, I was able to see it fine.
Now, does it look like it's the presentation mode, or does it look like the mode that you're in when you're making it?
No, it looks like the presentation mode.
Okay. I wonder, well, at least I have audio. So anyway, I just want people to pay attention to where it says the Planetary Consciousness Project and remember who you are. Remembering who you are means not remembering who your alters were. It's not about your ET past life. It's about your real you, the real version of you that's on the source field. What I mean by the source field, there's a parallel neutrino universe that we all come from. It's where the creator is. It's where our true reality is. And instinctually, we all remember this. And it's very, very simple. All you have to do is theorize or just conceptualize what you think heaven was when you were first told about it as a child, or you first heard the concept, depending on how you were raised. It's a fluid reality. It's not like this. There's no forced entropy at a certain, well, there's never any forced entropy, but there is some entropy at the lower levels, the third, like 3D through 5D, you're going to have some entropy, but it's not forced like this. There's no amnesia. There's none of these things that we deal with in this reality that are contrary to our common sense and our instinctual belief of what well, let me put it this way. If we're just energy, then, and we're consciousness, and our consciousness shapes our reality, then why are we creating something like this? And who created it for us? This isn't the normal state of reality, is what I'm saying. So remembering who you are is attempting to remember who you were before all of this began, before you found yourself here. And I don't just mean on this planet, and I don't just mean in another lifetime. For those of you who remember being an ET, I mean before that, because that entire thing is an EM pocket universe construct, a simulation at a cosmic level that's nested, and then you have the planetary version, which is the prison lockdown that we're in, where you don't have telepathy and you don't have remembrance, and everything is forced on you. It's an illusion, and we're going to talk about that illusion tonight. So I want to get into targeting first. So let's go down here, and I want to get into the standard type of targeting that everybody's being hit with in this community, not just the community, but worldwide. Okay, do you see what I'm showing right now on the screen?
It's not showing. It didn't pop up at the bottom. It usually has to pop up at the bottom, and then I'll add it. So some you didn't add right for whatever reason. You have to go share screen, then share screen again, then entire screen. Then you have to remember to hit allow, and then you toggle over. Yeah.
The thing is, it never asked me for allowing it now. So let me see what we got going on here. So, all right, I think I understand what's going on. All right, so okay. Do you see anything now? What do you see?
Yes, I got it. Perfect. Yeah, I got it. Let me pull it up.
What are you looking at specifically? Are you seeing the satellites?
Let me see. We'll see in a second. Cause we're seeing. We're good.
Top, it says geosynchronous.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, what this is, when people think of getting hit with a do, they're not quite sure where it's coming from. The tech is advanced to the point where they're not using the ground wave radio emergency network towers that were built after the Cold War. Those are those big towers that you see they're spread out geographically. I have one about an hour from my house. It's a big, tall tower. It looks like a radio tower. It's got long cables supporting it. So that's how this originated. And then it went to the cell towers, and then they added geosynchronous satellites. So those days of, what was it, conspiracy theory TV or conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura, when they did that program about this, they only talked about the Gwen towers, which was that's very early tech, and that has to do with, a lot of it has to do with that patent for V2K, the microwave patent. Yeah. That is so outdated compared to what they're using right now, and we're going to get to the heart of it. All right, so what they do is they use a geosynchronous satellite array. These satellites are equipped with technology that produces an EM frequency, electromagnetic frequency, which is the radiation that people get hit with when they get hit with a do, but it also uses scalar waves. I'm going to get into what scalar waves are a little bit later, but what I want to say right now is that scalar waves are basically the fundamental form or format or waveform of our consciousness and our souls. They're the expression of our souls. They're the expression of consciousness. And they use the as a carrier wave, and they use the EM part of it as also as a carrier wave too. They kind of carry each other symbiotically. So if you want to hit somebody with directed energy, you would need a scalar wave component to the EM wave. So the scalar wave programs the EM, and it gives it the instructions that it needs, and it allows it to target somebody. So you could be in the back seat of a car with people sitting on your lap, people like just smushed in there with you, 5 or 6 people in the back seat, piled up, too high. The person in the middle underneath all of that could get hit with a dew, and nothing else is affected. The car, the people around you, nobody gets hit but you. That's because your body has an EM frequency address that's tuned to your genetic code. It's like an IP address on a network. So the way this works is that I'm going to call it the IP address, but it's actually an electromagnetic frequency address for your electromagnetic container, which is your physical body. And that's the address where they can reach out and hurt you. All they need to get that, they don't need to abduct you. They don't need to take you in. They don't need a sample from the hospital. They don't need a blood, sample of your skin and anything like that. What they need simply is to have somebody who's augmented with tech, such as one of these super soldier assets or whatever you want to call it. But there's plenty of people that are being used in these programs that are connected and augmented with AI. And all they have to do is see your social media post. You could be a person of interest simply for that reason alone. And that's all they have to do. And once that person focuses on you, the computer that they're interfaced with creates a lock on that EM frequency address, and then they can start hitting you using AI to do it. It's not somebody's not necessarily pressing a button. It's an AI system. The AI system is called Atlas. Atlas is the handler interface. That's a global program where all of these handlers who, they go after assets, they target people for political purposes. They're there, and the AI system, the AI Atlas system is there to win a revolution without ever firing a shot. So the people that are standing up for what's right in this society, in this world, they're already in a handicapped state of affairs because the really strong people that would have taken this further and much faster have been neutralized. They've been taken out. And they use this technology, and I have to have an issue with my nose. I'm dealing with a sinus infection, so my voice is a little hoarse and my nose is itchy. Anyway, let's talk about how this is used and how it's used to do narrative seeding and other things to people. So the way this works is that this frequency is emitted from these satellites. The satellites have an EM carrier wave and a scalar carrier wave, and they're modulated through 5G towers and the entire telecommunications system. So this helps to amplify the signal. So it can come from a satellite, but it actually gains strength when it hits the ground, and it basically homogenizes itself with the 5G system. Now on the right-hand side of the screen, you see a person, and you see what represents the chakra system that's running straight down the spine. And we're going to get into how that's used a little bit later. There's another type of targeting that's more advanced than this that not a lot of people know about. And I'm going to dispel a lot of these kind of like, I don't know what you call it, like misinformation about this. But some of the effects of this and how this works is that it isn't just effects of directed energy. You could also have you can have your mood, your emotions, your sexual orientation, your thoughts. Anything could be changed with this technology. And the way this works is that when you get hit with it, you're actually getting hit with it right now. The people that are watching this program are being monitored, and they're being hit with this. Everybody's getting hit with it. Depends on if you're programmed into the system to be a target. So the way this works is if they want to narrow, like say there's a conference coming up. So they're going to basically zap everybody over a large geographical area. And these people are going to have thought injections. This is the way this technology works. They can inject thoughts, emotions, and full concepts into your mind to where you think it's actually your own thoughts. A lot of people have an inner voice. This can generate the inner voice. And the struggle is to determine if that's your inner voice or it's something external to yourself. People who are more adept in handling this type of intrusion into their mind get a feel for this type of technology, and they'll tell you that it feels hollow, it feels synthetic, and that's true. And so this is, for that reason, this is the less effective version of it, but this is what they use for large groups of people, and it can be deployed on a global basis from a huge satellite array, and this can be, and the entire population can be under this. And the idea is eventually you can tie, they want to tie this into the social credit score system. This is going to be the total lockdown of consciousness. This isn't just the chips in your brain, and isn't just thought transparency that the World Economic Forum talks about. It's this. And so they can do a lot of things with this, including programming you while you sleep. They can actually implant dreams into you, which are artificial dreamscapes. And you go to bed with say like one particular attitude. You're going to, you feel positive about yourself. You want to go out. Let's just say you're a disclosure activist. You got a podcast the next day, and you want to get up and you want to be 100%. You want to give it everything you have and have clarity of mind, and your heart needs to be in it. You wake up the next day and they've programmed you, and now you're full of doubt. You have anxiety. Maybe you feel depressed. There's a lot of things that they can do subconsciously while you're asleep by using this technology. And I've had this experience. I've had them where they've attempted to implant dreams. And one other thing that they do is a lot of people will have a series of dreams. They'll be lucid and very prophetic. A lot of times these are dream implants. And what they'll do is they'll put the propaganda into you, the programming, and then they'll induce a dream to see how you behave after the programming. So this can go on night after night after night, and they can gradually shape the way you behave and the way you think and act as far as your emotional state. So they can seed narratives like this, and then they use social media manipulation through the algorithms. What the algorithms will do is those people that they don't want to be heard will be throttled back, of course, and the ones that they want amplified with whatever message that they're trying to put out, they're going to get seen by everybody. So that helps to seed the narrative. And for the people that are targeted directly with this, because you have people that are indirectly targeted through the spread of the information, but the people who are directly targeted are going to have the emotional and mental manipulation taking place. And what I've seen is that when there's a conference coming up, especially the Full Disclosure Now conference, that they start doing this. They start working about 6 months beforehand, and they start sabotaging the story, and it's usually the same type of storylines get seeded into people's minds. You got handlers and all this stuff, and they want people to distrust each other and fight amongst each other. Now, this particular technology can make you physically ill, and in a way that you wouldn't think. It isn't just that you get hit with a dew and you get sick and your radiation sickness. That's one type of an attack. That's more of an aggressive attack that's there to give kind of a shock and awe effect to force you into compliance. It's for intimidation purposes. But to slow you down and prevent you from doing what you're supposed to do in the world in your life, they gradually make you sick with this technology. They can take over your central nervous system. This technology can be used to look through your eyes, taste through your mouth, and hear through your ears, and even feel through your skin. Your handlers, if they're monitoring you in real time, can actually taste your food. And I've had these experiences because early on, the handlers were portraying themselves as extraterrestrials. Okay, so a lot of people, unfortunately, in this community and abroad get contact from ETs that aren't real. They're synthetic AI beings, and they're part of a military MILAB program, which is a global campaign of disinformation. People have heard about Project Oblivion, and I believe Project Oblivion is much bigger than most people conceptualize it as. I think it's a false awakening that gradually took shape starting in the early 50s, and then rapidly took form after the advent of social media and the internet. And that's when you started to see in the early 2000s the emergence of virtual temple complexes, which just like the Joy of Satan, and there's others that I would mention that are still up and running, but that would attract a lot of trolls from the New Age movement who were cult followers who attack anybody that criticizes their New Age contactee guru, who's out there dividing the community, spreading hate, and spreading disinformation and false hope, and keeping you away from doing what you're supposed to do, because we're supposed to clean this mess up ourselves and not wait for saviors and Galactic Federation acolytes. So they can do a lot of things with this. Now, this is the technology that's used on the surface for the most part. This is the way that they get a large number of people, and you can mass manipulate whole populations using this. When you combine it with the stabilization and the technology that's in that, you enhance its effect. So in other words, you give people tech in their bodies, and then this will interact with it, and then they can literally do a lot more with this. And we don't even know all of it. We're only just scratching the surface.
And Nate, not to mention, I just want to say, I think I'm coming through your speaker too, but they target us financially too. You know, like for the first day of the conference, they nailed my audio podcast. They demonetized me, and I knew right away that it was some sort of targeting. You know what I mean? I knew it. You know, it was like because I didn't do anything wrong. That's why I knew it was targeting. Like I was like, I didn't do anything wrong, and I never had a problem with them before. Why would I have a problem now? You know, it didn't make sense. It was just like, you know, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you, because you helped me remember something. I was going to skip over this. The way that they affect people around you, and this includes people at like a big tech company or whatever it is. I mean, they have an agenda that's top down. It goes, you know, DHS. They'll say this person is a person of interest. We need to throttle back their views. We need to shut down their entire social media platform. So that's where, you know, the cancellations come in. That's where the open, you know, community guidelines rules that have no beginning or end are just wide open for anyone's interpretation, and they use them as they please. But what they do is, to explain this, and I'm going to have a presentation set up to where it really goes in deep, because there's a lot to remember here. But one of the ways that they get to people is they affect the people around them. And there's various programs that I'm going to go into in the future, ones that have to do with love bites, false twin flames, merging or actually fixing somebody up with a narcissist to hold them back. There's at least 6 or 7 programs associated with attacking people in the New Age, MILAB, Contact D community at large. There's also another program called Project Red Pill, which was inspired by the Matrix movie, that is being used for surface level truthers, just like Project Oblivion is being used against all of us. So it's the same thing. And if you want to look at what Project Red Pill is doing, take a look at Alex Jones and Sandy Hook. Look into that. Look at what's going on with Infowars.com. Look into We Are Change. Look into Nick Fuentes and all of these social media, conservative or freedom-oriented, patriotic, whatever, talking heads out there. And you're going to see that it's a cesspool of people stabbing each other in the back and infighting. And that's because Project Red Pill is the sister of, you know, Project Oblivion. It's there to squelch anyone trying to get the truth out and trying to change things, regardless if they're right or wrong in their ideas. If it's not going along with the program, they're going to be targeted by it. So now the way that they affect people around you is that they use this technology. They have to have you tied into a remote neural monitoring system. So the way this works is, let's just say I go to the doctor's office and I'll just use a real example. You know, I'm changing my primary care doctor. My previous doctor was willing to prescribe all of my necessary prescriptions, and it just was common sense. There was no problem. I changed my primary care doctor. Maybe it's because of my insurance or some other reason, or just convenience. And, you know, maybe I've moved. So I go to a new doctor. This doctor then refuses to service me, tells me I don't need half of what I'm on, and tells me that they don't want to treat me at all. Or they do, but they won't give me what I need to keep me healthy. Such as telling me that, well, your blood pressure is high, but you don't need to be on that medication. You need to just go cold turkey and just let it go skyrocketing till your head blows off. They'll say something that you don't need testosterone. You don't need this, or you don't need pain management when you've had 7 surgeries. Regardless of what it is, they're gonna turn on you, and it's gonna be unexpected. This could happen with family members, spouses that just all of a sudden just start opposing everything you are and everything you believe. And it's like, well, how does this happen? You know, so there's ways to alter people's behavior over time. And then that's a type of long-term strategy with this type of targeting. But how they get to people is they need to have remote neural monitoring through the victim. This is how this works, because they need that feedback. They need the physiological feedback. They need the cognitive feedback. Any type of information that they can get through their system allows them, it goes into their system and it goes into an AI system which looks forward in time and takes all this other data that is absolutely necessary to create predictive modeling. The predictive modeling is then used to target you and to head you off at the past. So if you're going to make a decision in the near future that's going to be detrimental to their agenda. So let's just say you're going to connect with some people, you're an activist, you're going to connect with people and you're going to write a book or get somebody to finance a book, or maybe you're going to get discovered in the community and be allowed to go in front of people to conference, and you're going to get your information heard. So they see that coming. So what do? They start to manipulate people around you, but they need that feedback from you. And now remember, they can see through your eyes and hear through your ears. So they've got the best vantage point possible. Plus they know how your body's reacting and they can hear your thoughts. This is monitored 24/7 by artificial intelligence. So even if you don't have an active handler, you have people that check on it. You have AI that checks on it and flags people of interest when their activity level spikes up to a certain degree. They then go on what you would call active, active surveillance. This is when you start to get assigned. This is when they assign you a one-on-one handler that may have 2 or 3 clients, maybe more, or you may be special enough to them, and you have the possibility that you're going to cause a lot of problems for them. So you may just get a one-on-one handler who monitors you 24/7 using AI. They're not on the job full time, but the AI fills in for when they can't be there. So when they're sleeping and doing something, the AI is monitoring you, and they're being contacted in real time. So, and then there's analysts above that. The AI acts as an analyst, and it takes in all the data, and it creates these strategies to stop what you're doing, to derail you, pair you up with a narcissist, to destroy your life, destroy your health. So it's highly calculated. This is how they do this. This is why they're so effective. So anyway, this can cause depression, lack of motivation. It can zap your energy, and it can do a lot of things, make you paranoid. There's a lot of people that have difficulty trusting others in this community. It's because people have hurt them. But in truth, it's hard for them to heal because their emotions and their thoughts are being artificially amplified. They're also being injected with other ideas that aren't their own. So if you're worried about people not being trustworthy around you, this is going to enhance that paranoia and make you distrust more people than you normally would. It's also going to skew your intuition. So when you're thinking to yourself and you're in deep thought and you hear an inner voice give you positive advice, and let's just say that positive advice pays off. This is them gaining your trust. So they'll keep injecting the positive information and help you along. So then you're like, wow, I've got this inner voice. It talks to me and it tells me what I need to be successful in my life. I've gotten a raise or this, that, and the other. And then you start doing something that they don't want you to do. And then the containment turns nasty. And then that's when that inner voice starts to inject negative thoughts in your head and negative words, negative phrases. And you start thinking things that aren't your own thoughts, like you're petting your cat. Next thing you know, you're imagining killing your cat. And you stop and you recoil and you're like, where did that come from? Is there something wrong with me? And I've had to deal with that since I was a child because they were doing it all the way back then. But they weren't using the technology that I'm pointing to right now that's on the screen. So I may have left some things out, but let's get into the more advanced version of this targeting. Now, can you see that picture?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a medical setting. Just got to get these.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think we should take the video down off YouTube and just go, or not take it down off? You leave this part up, but go straight to Rumble. Do you think they're gonna? Or do you think they're gonna target it? Or do you think we could leave the live stream?
I think we're fine. I wouldn't worry about it because I think if we have a decent connection and we try to change it, I think we're going to possibly lose it.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll keep it in the live stream. If I have to, I'll just put it to Rumble only after the live stream or something, Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I get my act together, I'll be streaming with you. Hopefully that works. Anyway, what you're looking at here, this isn't an accurate depiction. It's as accurate as I could get it with the AI. So there's certain internal rules within the AI. It wouldn't allow me to make an image with military personnel and, doing experiments on people. So this is as close as I could get. Way back years ago, wasn't that long ago, I'd say within the last 5 or 6 years, it was one of the early shows that I did with you, Rob. I hope it's still available because your channel was taken down. I talked about having this experience where a friend of mine, my ankle was being attacked. It had been hurting for 6 or 7 months. It was swollen. I asked her to do a healing on it. And when she did, she had this profound set of visions, and all this information started to come in, and she saw my body, a clone of me, in a facility like this. And I had all these wires, like a sleep study, when you have wires all over your head and stuff and sensors. But my body was laying on a type of a stretcher device like this at a workstation. And there was a lot more equipment. There's wires connected to every one of these particular clones. There was tall Draco standing in the room, just a couple of them. There were human-looking ETs and other types of ET species with military personnel wearing white lab coats, masks, gloves, surgical stuff. And they were working on certain clones that were in this big room. And this room was much bigger, and there wasn't fluorescent lighting. It's shadowless lighting. It's scalar wave lighting, so you don't have actual lighting sources like that. And the room was much, much bigger with a higher ceiling, and it was concrete. It's inside a dome. And what they do is this is the high-end type of targeting. So they can't do this on a large scale because they have to clone the person. They have to have a clone. They have to have multiple clones of you in storage. So what they do is they take the clone and they put it in use. It'll go into a workstation like this in a large room. They have these all over the world. They're used for assets, and not every MILAB asset will potentially get this treatment. This is for people that are hard to control, they're harder to contain, and they need that extra level of manipulation. So as you can imagine, they can only do this to a certain number of people. There's a limit, and they can't exceed it because they don't have the manpower, they don't have the space. So that is one advantage for the population. But it's not much of one because, they could use this for world leaders, but they definitely use it for MILAB assets, especially with myself. So anyway, what they do, this works like a high-tech voodoo doll. So you're connected by a synthetic tether, and I'm going to show you another image here. No, it's the wrong one. Here we go. You see this? Now, this is the other type of scalar targeting. What they do is they attach a tether between the clone and you on the astral. So the tether's synthetic. It doesn't have anything to do with a life force core like in the past that I thought. Based in the quantum entanglement concept, but it's not the silver core that you would think about, connecting you to your soul or anything like that, like I initially thought. So the way this works is your clone generally looks like you. It could. Even if you look different from your clone, like say they had a different version of it, your genetic code has to be in there to a certain degree before this will work. So that creates the sync. So in other words, your frequency, that EM frequency that I referred to as the frequency cage, which is the body, the clone has to match that frequency of your physical body. So there has to be a match. Then they attach the tether. The problem with this type of targeting for us is that it's far harder to detect. That inner voice that you hear, it doesn't feel synthetic. That's the why they use this. So if you're looking for that synthetic energy signature from these voices that are coming through, you're not necessarily going to be able to detect it. Now, it takes a long time, and you literally have to block all of the targeting in order to get to the point where you can determine just the difference between scalar targeting like this and the other version of targeting. You have to take away their control, which gets rid of the smoke, the static between you and what you're looking at. I'm just giving you an analogy here, so that you can determine that what they're doing to you. So when you hear the inner voice, it's going to sound just like yours. And it's almost going to sound about it's going to feel about 90% you. Where the V2K version, and I'm not talking about the micro, I'm talking about the scalar EM stuff that we were just discussing, that's going to feel more synthetic. This isn't. This is designed to override your senses so that you think it's coming directly from yourself, your higher self, whatever. And they can use this full time. They'll have a clone at a workstation that just kept alive, and the clones are in a comatose state. They don't have consciousness. They're not aware of themselves. They've just got enough of a life force in them to keep them going. They're just simply there as a connection to inflict pain on you and control. So they can damage your clone. And I had a situation, Rob, that I talked about on your show in one of the early podcasts where I was being attacked. And they were showing me my clone laying in this facility. This is because I saw the exact facility my friend saw, and then another person that remote viewed it too. Now, I also want to now before I get into that, I guess I should just finish talking about it. I was shown this, and they showed me a long needle going through my genitalia, and I felt the pain. Then I had electrical shocks going down my legs, and they showed me a live fluoroscopic X-ray screen where they showed this long needle that was about a foot long probing my spine, so I could see the outline on the fluoroscopic X-ray. And then I could see from the side, it was from the left-hand side, which from my point was the right, and it was literally probing into my spine. It was going into the space between the vertebrae and where the spinal column, or where the spinal cord was, and it was stabbing my spinal cord, or at least the clone spinal cord. So I was feeling electrical shocks going down my legs, and there was this little short reptilian, which could have been a projection. It could have been a handler, and it could have been humans doing this, not ETs. I couldn't tell, but what they said to me in real time is that I'm probing your spine, and I felt it. It felt like electric shocks going down into my lower extremities, and then I had a lot of other pain that they caused as well. So that's how I know about this. There's a Dr. Malanga, which Evie Lorgan references quite a bit in her talks and podcasts and her books. Dr. Malanga was one of the first, if not the only person, I think first to actually bring this up in a book. He had been interviewing a lot of different MILAB victims, and some of them started to recount exactly what I'm telling you. So I'm not the first one to bring this up, but what I've noticed is in this community, is a serious lack of information and education on how this works. And the reason this happened is because once this information was found out, by a lot of different highly skilled researchers who were MILAB victims, every one of them that I know of is a MILAB victim theirself. And I'm referring to Evie Lorgan, Dr. Malanga, Carla Turner, and others. Okay, so they were aware of this, but what happened was we had a large injection of New Age BS that came into the situation, and it's now reaching a fevered pitch to the point where it's starting to reveal itself as BS, and people are starting to slowly but thankfully reject this information, because the purpose of injecting the New Age and the contactee circus that we have right now, where we're waiting for the Galactic Federation messiahs to come and save us. We're waiting for the white hats to save us. We're waiting for QAnon, this next drop, and all of these other things that they're doing. And by the way, QAnon apparently is a big part of Project Red Pill. And and Alex Jones just recently said that Trump was involved in this, or this was an intelligence agency operation that kept Trump in the dark about it. And you can believe that if you want, but he also says something that's true, which is that after the fact that it got taken over by the intelligence agencies and used to create essentially a patriotic circus that the entire world plugged itself into, and it's still pumping out garbage information right now. And people have gotten into this mindset where they're so addicted to social media and lying to other people and just being the actual heart of the problem. And they're pumping out garbage information, one post after another. They're using AI to create all of these images of 3AI Atlas to try to drum up fear and hysteria, just to simply get views. And for what? For an adrenaline rush? For an endorphin high? I don't know what it is, but it's not helping anybody. Facebook is a disgusting sewage pile. But anyway, getting back to what I'm trying to talk about here, I was going through pretty severe targeting for a long time. Some of the symptoms were pain and stiffness, fatigue, extreme fatigue. Now, it isn't just mental, it's physical fatigue. And that's because they're draining energy from you through the tether. And the longer you talk to these handlers, that's another thing. If you pay them attention, if you pay them any mind and you keep the dialogue going, you're going to pay for it, because they're going to be draining your energy and making you sick. The more you engage them, the more you reinforce the tether. This has a lot to do with energy management and how you think. You've got to really change everything about the way you think and your belief system and how you manage energy, which is your emotional state and your thoughts when you're trying to combat this type of thing. Because generally, overall, the key to this is we're co-creators of our reality, and we create our own reality too, because we believe things, we build our own personal belief system by what we take in. And if they're in your head, they're going to be shaping that belief system. They're also going to be controlling what you take in, because they control social media. They make sure the garbage that people are reading and watching on Facebook and other platforms is all you see. You're not going to see this. This is going to be hidden. If I posted this on Facebook and I've written about it on Facebook, it gets about 5 or 10 views. But then I get a feed that has something absolutely absurd. Trump's working for angels. He just spoke to Jesus. He's flying down in a fiery chariot, and he's going to be.
That's hilarious, dude.
Yeah, a national broadcast. And there's a spaceship.
Or that Trump's a part of the QAnon movement. There's people that still actually believe that QAnon's a real thing.
Well, it's a disinfo operation. It's quite obvious now. I mean, I can get into that, but I mean, it's pointless. But people have a very, very short attention span, and they don't remember. And there's a part of them that doesn't want to believe that things are as bad as they are, because that also means they've got to actually do something about it. Instead, they prefer to wait for somebody else.
Yeah. Everybody wants a savior. There, you got a good point. That's a really good point. Everybody wants a savior.
Exactly. It's how we've been programmed in society. Don't take initiative on your own to change things. Vote in a politician to do the same thing for you, okay? That works if you have representative government, which we don't have. We don't have it anywhere on the planet. I don't care what people say. They can post, they can do a Q drop on how we took it all back, and we've already won. We haven't even started. We got to start. You really want to start? You got to get everybody on the same page. People have to wake up. It's how you believe. It's what you believe and how you see the world and yourself and your role in it. That makes all the difference. Anyway, so some of these things that it can do is tissue damage. Now, this can be done remotely with scalar waves and EM waves through the other system that uses satellites. But this is more direct, more intense, more effective. This is why they go to the trouble of creating a clone of you and using this system where it actually connects to you through a tether. But voices in your head, intrusive thoughts, just like I've talked about, only it's much, much harder to combat. You can't put an EMF blocking cap on and reduce the signal like you can with the other tech when they're using this. And that's what people need to know about. They need to be aware. Half of the battle, half the struggle of turning these people back and stopping them, and the extraterrestrials as well, is acknowledging the problem. First, you have to acknowledge it, and then you have to understand the mechanics of it. You have to know how the methodologies work. And we got to get on that page. That's another thing that needs to be done. We need to have a unified base of information, a baseline substrate of information that we can all pull from. And that, so we need to have good information. We need to get the garbage out. And they've made it so difficult. So anyway, I want people to think of this, and I want you to understand how this works. This is the highest technology that they have when it comes to targeting individuals or persons or larger populations, but it's very, very limited in its scope, because if they have, like I said, they have to have a clone version of you. And we go over here to a slide. Let's go over this here. It says more effective than scalar wave directed energy targeting, but is more labor intensive and resource intensive, which is what I talked about. It's harder to detect. I'm just going to read this over. The false inner voice feels more like your own and less synthetic as opposed to conventional V2K technologies, and it cannot be blocked by conventional methods such as EMF blocking materials. Now, this is the last part of this is extremely important, because the other technology can affect your belief system. They can use social media algorithms to limit the information that people get. All that's being done. If you're out there talking about soul traps, the algorithms will suppress you. If you're out there talking about NDEs and how wonderful it is to have went into the tunnel of light and then been sent back out to tell everybody how great it was and how you saw heaven and how you had this amazing experience and saw all of these realms and dimensions, and now you're coming back to talk to everybody and write a book. And literally, if it's the right person, because what they do is, this system, this Atlas system, psychologically profiles someone upon death. They already know who you are. When you come into this world, into this planet, and you're incarnated into a physical body, an EMF containment system, what takes place is that your consciousness is fully mapped by the AI Atlas system. You're tagged with an implant, you're cataloged, you're put into the system, and then you're put into a body under amnesia. And then you're monitored. Now, if you have certain abilities and you've come here to do something and you have some support on the outside, could be within the universe, you say you're an extraterrestrial, you're coming here to try to change things, to try to enhance or to expand people's awareness. You're here to get somebody out. Whatever the case is, you're here. They know you're here. They know why you're here. So they will put you in a body. And if you come in as a pair with another person, say your soulmate comes in, your mission partner, they almost always, in every case, will split you up and put you as far away from each other as they can possibly do. So I'm one of those people that had that experience, and I've talked to others who have had it as well. And it's very painful when they reunite with their other half, because it's almost always under a type of manipulated situation, which we'll get into in another podcast. But what I want to get into here is what happens after death. And this is something that very few MILABs understand. A MILAB situation is completely different from a starseed situation and from a regular person. The regular people who they have been in this simulation, in this lockdown world, this planetary consciousness simulation prison for a very, very long time, to where they don't have any remembrance of self. Okay, they don't have any residual psychic abilities. Everything has been blocked, and over years and lifetimes being just recycled over and over again, they've been conditioned to believe the lies that we're told, which is that there is no such thing as psychic abilities. It doesn't exist. It's a figment of people's imagination, and it's a product of mental illness. It's pure schizophrenia and psychosis. That's what the medical establishment wants you to believe. That's what the psychiatrists want you to believe. We're barely breaking into that now. Okay, we're barely getting some recognition that this isn't mental illness. But for the most part, the majority of society either believes it to be fantasy and fiction or mental illness. And if you don't believe me, well, go talk to one of your relatives or your friends and just start bringing this subject up. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't believe what I'm saying. I'm just saying it hypothetically. Bring it up to them. Bring it up at Thanksgiving. Bring it up at Christmas. Start talking about soul traps. They'll tell you to shut up. They'll tell you to shut up, and if you keep at it, they're going to say that they're going to think you're mentally ill, especially if you say, look, I know that this stuff exists. Okay? If you have memories of past lives, that's considered a mental illness. If you have psychic experiences, you're schizophrenic. That's how people are trained to see things, and that's what they want you to believe. And by controlling your belief system, they can shut you down, and they can stop you from opening these abilities up.
And Nate, can I just interject? There's a really fucked up law in this country that I've seen happen to a couple people in our community. In Pennsylvania, it's called a 302, where your family member can involuntarily commit you to a psychiatric ward if they feel that you're a threat to yourself or someone else. Meanwhile, you won't be a threat. Like, I've seen it happen to many women who were single moms. They're just trying to take care of their kids, and they're interested in this stuff, and their family members start to look bad at them. They try to take their kids away. They try to, it's a disaster. It can become a disaster. And I believe that therein lies targeting for single moms,
Yeah, all of that is used against you. The healthcare system, red flag laws for firearm owners. I mean, you could have somebody say, oh, I saw Nathan on, he was on a podcast on Rumble and he was talking about aliens and he was talking about the simulation. I think he's mentally ill and, you know, he does go to the gun range. So I'm going to call the police on him and they're going to SWAT team him when he's in his underwear, half asleep.
That's not even funny. That's horrible, dude. That's horrible. That's horrible, dude. That's fucking horrible. Like, dude, it happens to a lot of streamers. Honestly, yeah, it does. You know, people get doxxed and then they get swatted, and, you know, and people can die over that stuff. That's what's not funny about it. You can literally get shot by the police and die. You know,
exactly. And another thing too, when they target you like this, they want to create a situation where you're disassociating from reality. So you don't know when you're being targeted and you don't know when just something went wrong all on its own for normal reasons. And the further that goes on and the more videos people make and they just start complaining about, you know, talk about their day and, you know, they went to get a newspaper and can't even use that example anymore. They went to buy, let's just say they went to Starbucks and the espresso machine is jammed. All of a sudden that becomes the military did that. Then they go somewhere else and then, you know, they have problems with people. So every problem and inconvenience that they have in their entire day somehow gets translated to being targeted. And then they'll start talking about it. And eventually, if they're not able to differentiate from what's really happening and what's not, which is the strategy of the handlers, they start to lose grip with reality, and then their behavior spirals out of control. They don't show up at work anymore. They have problems on the job when they are there. They have problems with family members and relationships. And this all starts to snowball out of hand and get to the point where it's very easy to, you know, to call the police and say, so-and-so is mentally ill. I just saw their last video. They're talking about, you know, how the military, how they did something at a McDonald's and they couldn't get to the drive-through. I mean, they're literally losing it, you know, and that's just a superficial example, but it's really, really tragic what they do. They systematically destroy people. And if they're not strong enough, and really the thing is they need support. There needs to be a knowledge base out there for them to tap into, and there needs to be a community of support. I'm seeing that, you know, we've got some of that now, but the problem is that people don't know what to do. And that's why I'm here to talk about this stuff. But I'm going to get back to what I was talking about. The worst aspect of any of this, especially the clone stuff, and this is with any MILAB, is that there's going to be implants in you, and these implants will actually connect you to the simulation architecture. So what happens is that when you die, they can easily hit you with a frequency in the void. So you've left your body. They can usually hit you with the frequency before you exit your body or moments after. And what this does is it gives you instant amnesia. So you're no longer remembering who you are, and you don't know your context, your situation. So you're just in a blank state and you're in a void, and you're not even aware that you passed away. It could happen in your sleep, or it could just have happened suddenly to you. You could have had a heart attack at a restaurant. Now you're dead and you're in this void. You can't hear anyone, but you're there and you're present. You don't have a body. You have no sense of a physical body at all. And then the light appears, and it's comforting. It's wonderful. It feels amazing. And you'll start seeing images of your loved ones. You'll start, you know, if you're a MILAB, you may actually see your superior officer. You may be reminded you're still on duty. You've got responsibilities. And when I talk to people at the conference, what I found is because I'm different than a lot of them, the ones who are really super soldier, altar oriented, have taken on through integration a lot of these personality aspects of these alters, including being in loving relationships where they feel the love and attachment to people in their alters' lives, say like a spouse or a child or whatever, family or friends. And that's an anchor. It's an emotional anchor that this system uses, this Atlas system uses to manipulate you after you die. Also, for regular people, the Atlas system, which is for everyone, isn't just for MILABs. It's used to recycle them too, and they're going to be tied to emotional anchors as well. So unfinished business in your life, unresolved conflicts and relationships, a love affair that never fully became what it was meant to be because your life was cut short. All of these things are used against you when you die. are all used to get you to reincarnate or to go into the tunnel, because once you consent to that, it's generally curtains for your ass, because you're going to go in and they're going to have control over your consciousness. So that's how they get regular people. Now, and I'm going to get to what happens after you bypass the tunnel of light and the moon. I'm just going to stick with what happens to a MILAB. So the MILAB gets hit with amnesia. Sometimes that can happen to regular people too. There's been accounts where people exit their body and they're being rapidly pulled down the tunnel without even not even given the opportunity to consent. And what they do is throughout your life, you're programmed to accept this. You're programmed through religion. You're programmed through television programming. And this is why the algorithms promote NDEs, but actually throttle back anyone that's questioning them. They don't want people questioning it. And I'm not saying that Mark Zuckerberg and moronic idiots like that who run these things, these big tech billionaires who are soulless, and it's not like they know all of this and they're in on it. It's just this is being compartmentalized to the point where one hand doesn't know what the other's doing. So the system is going to do this to everybody. It's run amok. It's just going on its own now. It's going into business for itself. This AI, it's been programmed to target certain things. Patriots don't care if my scathing review of an NDE is suppressed on, say, YouTube or Rumble. They don't care, because that doesn't matter to them. They're in the surface level. So this stuff gets easily overlooked, and nobody really understands the gravity of it, the significance of it, why it's being done. So they want to shape your belief systems. Essentially, you'll be a good slave and you'll go into the tunnel. So you're in MILAB, and now you're in the void. They've hit you with the amnesia, and you could be strong, you could be well aware, and maybe the amnesia doesn't work. Maybe you still have the coherence of self. Maybe you still remember, because you've really done a lot of work. You've done a lot of shadow work in your life, so you don't have those emotional tethers. You've actually denounced so much of the social system and so much of the culture, everything. You see it all as toxic. You see it all as a trap. You see it all as a prison system. Okay? I'm describing myself and a lot of people in this community. And you get to that point where it's like, okay, I know what I have to do, and I'm not going into that tunnel. So you're going to bypass the tunnel. So then what happens? Okay, well, if you're tethered like this, if you've got these tethers attached to you, which all MILABs will, and they're going to have etheric implants and everything, that homing signal that you associate with getting out of here, maybe you associate it with an extraterrestrial lifetime that you can remember that you've had, and you're staying away from the whole MILAB thing. You want to get out of it. You want to be free. You're not like a lot of MILABs who don't think that there's a way out. So they just feel that being a good soldier is the only way they can really make it. That's a huge trap. You never want to do that to yourself. So, but putting those folks aside, because they're going to follow orders, they're going to go into the tunnel and they're going to be recycled and they're going to be reassigned back into a program and be put back into a body and inside a dump someplace or off planet, and they're stuck, and they're not going to remember who they just were. That's done. It's over. You don't have a right to your actual experiences and your memories, and all the people you loved and cared for are gone. You're going to forget all of them. Okay, and they're going to rewrite your consciousness. Why? Because you gave them consent. That's why. So for those people that have done the work and they realize what's going on, and they realize, hey, I got a chance to get out of this. Okay, I've learned enough about this. I'm confident I'm not going to fall for this BS. I'm not going in that tunnel. Where you feel you need to go is your home tends to go right back into the handler's hands, because the tether and the implants are going to skew your ability to determine where you need to go. So what feels right is wrong. That's what I'm saying. That's the way this works. And there's a way to get out of this. And it's not easy, because it's the exact opposite of what everybody's done. In the MILAB community, the big push is to find out who your alters are and integrate. And then you're given these promises from other people, like, hey, if you integrate, you're going to reclaim some of those abilities that you had. Those psychic abilities that you need, and you need that to fight against the targeting and do disclosure work, and you need to help other people. And maybe you have this idea because it was part of your original life mission that you want to use these abilities to heal people and to help them recover from these experiences. All are honorable things. But if you go the wrong direction with this and you rely on your alters to give you these abilities, what you're doing is you're allowing the program handlers through your alters to manipulate you. So your alters are in a program, and it's a highly structured program. Some of these alters may be inside you, and the handlers still have access to them, so they're not in active use. But it's even more dangerous to try to connect with the ones that are actively in the programs, because they're monitored, their thoughts are monitored. There's nothing that can go on in their minds that isn't being recorded by the AI system, by the Atlas system. So it's all there. Their superior officers know they're communicating with you. They know that you're giving your original self memories. Sorry, Rob, you had a question.
No, I was just, yeah. We're good.
Okay. Early on, last year, I guess middle of last year, I'd come to an awareness of this to a certain degree, and I was asking other people in the community, do you think that you yourself are the original self? And a lot of the people that I talked to and asked this question to couldn't answer the question. They said, oh, maybe I think maybe I have another original self. My original self's on whatever, some other world that's controlled under the MILAB program on a different timeline or whatever. But the truth is that your original self is always right here on this planet. And the reason why is because if you think about it, these alters that you have, they have controlled consciousness and implants and everything, but so do you. So there's no difference there. You're both versions of you are being monitored by this system, by AI. But the difference is that those versions of you are highly, highly controlled. You have the opportunity to be different because you're in society. They don't have the level of control. You're not living on a spacecraft. You're not living in a dome. You're living in a house. You're living in an apartment. Hopefully you're not living out of a van or a car or on somebody's couch because they'll destroy you and force you into those types of situations. But you're living in society, and you're not subject to the brain chip implants yet. The World Economic Forum and Elon Musk haven't gotten their way, and they're not monitoring your thoughts anymore. So that's not happening. It's happening to your alters, but it's not happening to you. That gives you the ability to break free. And this world is used, the here and now, this particular timeline, this is where the original selves go. And it's not exactly even the original self. We're going to get into that in a moment, a little bit later. But you're a soul fragment of your oversoul. Same thing with the extraterrestrials. In the electromagnetic field universe, the EM universe overlay, which is what we're existing in, every one of you, every person, this includes all of the people that are on other planets and all of the people here on Earth, are a fragment of an oversoul. You're not a whole being. You're a piece of it. So what's that noise, Rob? Is there...
Oh, let me mute. Sorry.
I thought it was them. But anyway, you're not your whole being. And you have to realize that. I'm just going to get a drink for a second. I lost my train of thought. All right, so you're not your whole self, but you're a fragment of that oversoul. And you're here on this planet, which means you're the original self in this equation. So you have the ability to break free, and this is where it actually has to happen at. And what you have to do is you have to want to be who you used to be, not who the programs made you to be. So you don't want to aspire to be your alter, okay? Like an alter, like there's people in this community that'll have an alter that's more muscular than they are. They're more handsome. They're built better. They're taller. They're stronger. They have all of these TSP abilities, psionic abilities. And, they're augmented with tech, and they can do stupendous things. And the person is in a body that's being diminished. Their energy levels are being kept low. They're affecting their hormones. They're affecting their cognitive abilities. They're wrecking them financially. They're targeting them. So to them, the original self, who they are right now, is a lesser being than the ones that they've created. So some people fall into the trap of aspiring to be that alter personality, because that's like the superhuman version of them, the superhero version. When they look at their self in the mirror, they feel terrible that this is all they have because of what's been done to them. So that's another trap. You don't want to be who your alters are. You want to be who you were before you're even an extraterrestrial. You want to be who you were before the electromagnetic universe came together. And you want to be who you are on the source field currently in real time. When I say real time, it isn't linear, it's non-linear time. But on the other side, in the source field, with the creator and everybody else, that's the true reality. So that's the whole version of you. And there's a version of you there, and it's hoping that you, the piece, the fragment, can get yourself out. You're connected by a tether. This isn't a synthetic tether. This is a tether it's a life force. It's a communication tether, but it connects you to your oversoul, and your oversoul to you as the fragment. Your chakra system is like the socket for the plug. Excuse me. So you have the tether connecting to you as the fragment. Your chakras are essentially the interface for the tether. It's the connection between you and your oversoul, but it's also programmed to anchor you into this reality, into this timeline, into this linear time electromagnetic construct, which you can call the electromagnetic universe. I would actually call it the cosmic consciousness simulation overlay, and it's nested. So you're in an overlay that's inside an overlay. So you have a more locked down version around this planet as a simulation around the planet, and a much bigger one across the cosmos. And your oversoul is on the outside of that looking in. And that tether connection can be drastically weakened. That's why these extraterrestrials, most of them, if not all, there could be a fraction of 1% are even aware of this, that they themselves are in a simulation. They themselves are not whole. When I was remembering this stuff the last 20 years and trying to piece it together while I was having false military assets masquerading as false ETs, they were trying to skew my understanding of this to where I thought that the current self, who I am now, is the fragment of the extraterrestrial that's living outside this planet someplace else, when it's completely false. It's impossible for you to exist as an extraterrestrial on another planet and then actually be here. It's like that part of you comes here. They literally take your soul and put it here. The other versions of you can exist, but they exist in a different way, and they're part of the oversoul construct. So you have an infinite network of selves across time and space, dimensions and so forth. But on the source field, you're whole, except for when there's fragments here in the EM universe. I hope people understand this. I'm going to show you a picture of something right down here. Let me show you this first. I don't want to confuse people with this stuff, but this right here is called the cosmic web. This is from the James Webb Telescope. The James Webb Telescope is capable of taking images in the electromagnetic spectrum. So instead of seeing photons, it literally sees electromagnetism. Are you able to see this, Rob? Rob, are you there?
I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Right. Yeah, you can
see it. We're good.
Yeah, actually, if you can stay unmuted, if it's possible, that way, because I have no way to tell what's going on. I'm actually not even seeing you. I'm seeing the presentation screen where I'm at.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, this is the cosmic web. Okay, and if you look at this, the first thing that comes to mind is it looks like neural networks inside a brain, and it functions like that. If you want to know where the brains of the simulation are, or the network itself, this is it. This is just a little snapshot of it. If you look in here, you're going to see junctions. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Do you see the cursor moving?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just say there's nodes in here. These are junctions, okay? And these are electromagnetic filaments. So just to give you an idea in regard to space travel and how it works,
Nate, I got to say something real quick. Remember, me and you talked about this off air, because me and you talk a lot, and you told me that this has to do something with the blockchain. I mean, I don't want to confuse everybody, but I think we have to bring that up, right?
Not in this one, but I can briefly mention it. The way that the simulation works, because it has to catalog souls, it has to make records of everything, not just the individual people, the souls themselves, but every action and reaction is recorded, cataloged, processed, and stored. So in order to do this, the blockchain program code is what's used, and what was used, because this was originally, what you're looking at is an electromagnetic overlay over the source field. Okay.
No, wait. Is the simulation based off of what like the Gnostics call the demiurge? Like, is it real? Is the simulation naturally evil, or is it a holographic overlay of like an evil simulation over a benevolent one that somehow got hijacked?
Yeah, that the latter, what you said, is very close. What initially happened was, on the source field, there was a decision made by groups of souls who were able to to make these type of constructs. These are very, I'm just going to leave it I'm going to explain it like this. On the source field, there isn't a hierarchy, with the exception of a certain degree of number of souls that actually create reality. They're the architects of existence. They laid the groundwork for all of these realms. This is going way back when things were first, created. It isn't just, the creator saying, let there be light, and all of a sudden it's there. It was something that developed, and it developed in nonlinear time. So technically it could look like it happened in a flash of an instant, but it actually took time, but not in nonlinear time. So all of this was designed and built and created, and souls were born, and they populated the source field. So the idea was, because the source field has 13 levels, the 13th level, you're with God, you're with the creator, you're a fractal being at that point. That's kind of excluded to most people don't ever get there. That's for the architect grade souls, but there's 12-dimensional levels below that. And for our experience, this would be 3D, and there's 4D, 5D, all the way up to 12D. Higher you go, the more fluid the reality becomes. In order to help souls evolve to get to the point where they can move up in these levels to where there's more fluidity and less solidity, and there's less challenges, and you have more control over your environment, you can create the beautiful world and reality that you want and co-create it with others. That's the source field. That's the heaven people conceptualize in their minds when they think of God, I just want to get out of here and be, and I want to feel safe and be happy. What would it be like if I was completely removed from this? And then you go back to childhood and you start thinking about what people talked about heaven being like. This is basically what I'm saying. And the higher you go in that particular source field universe, the more fluidity you get, the more control you get. In other words, you can get to the point where if you want to travel from across the cosmos, you just will yourself there. You don't need a spacecraft. There's no separation from anyone. Linear time doesn't exist. Time is divergent on the source field, meaning it can go sideways, it can go back and forth, it can go any which way in any direction it wants to. What sideways time would be is you can coexist on different levels. So you could be on 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, having all these mutual experiences, and you're absorbing all of this information, and you can switch back and forth from each one of those personas or versions of yourself. It's all done to enhance your life experience, to improve yourself, and to give yourself the ability to live at those higher fluidity states, to where you can be closer and closer to the creator. Or some people prefer to go into lower densities because they like the challenge. They like making a campfire versus willing one to exist, or just not even needing one at all, or living in an existence where you don't have any form. Okay, so it's not for everybody. So there's plenty of places for people to find themselves, and you can exist simultaneously on different ones. So that would be a divergent time experience. Time is essentially how we perceive experiences. But in this realm, in this 3D construct that we live in, this EM universe, time is linear. So, you kind of go from the start to the beginning, and from the start to the finish, it just kind of moves like a line. But anyway, getting back to what I'm saying here with this particular cosmic web construct, when you travel across space in, say, the 3D to 5D realm in this EM universe, you need a spacecraft, unless you have a portal. But needless to say, whether you're in a spacecraft or you're going through a portal, the same rules apply. You have to go through a system. It isn't like the source field. And what I'm going to say is on the source field, the way you transfer yourself from one point to another, okay, because space, time, and none of that really exists in the way that we think here. It's non-linear, it's divergent. Everything is just a matter of consciousness and imagination. So what you do is you shift your frequency. So you match the frequency of your destination. If you want to be with someone, you resonate with their frequency and you're there. You're there physically and however more, and you can be to whatever level of physicality you want to be, depending on what level, dimensional level you're on. But you can move after a certain level, which when you get past around 6D, you can teleport yourself and move from one point to another. There's no limitations. You don't need a craft to go from here to the other side of the universe, and there's many of them. It's infinite. You just frequency match. This is what's happening when spacecraft travel. The difference is in the source field, it's one continuous jump. You can refer to it as neutrino drift, because this is a neutrino universe that we're talking about. We're in an electromagnetic universe, which is a pocket. It's an overlay over the neutrino universe. So what you have here is you have this electromagnetic filament lattice system. This is the frequency cage of the cosmic consciousness simulation. So in order to travel from point A to point B, like say you want to go from here to Andromeda, you would phase shift into the lattice and then phase shift to the waypoints. The waypoints are the junctions in these filaments. There's many junctions in these filaments that you can't see. So I'll give you like here, this is a junction right here. This is a junction here. There's a junction here. These are, the bigger ones. But all of these have waypoints. So if say like, for example, you're going from this point to here, and you're doing it in the EM universe, not in the source. Now the source field, if you can see my cursor, you would phase shift and then phase back into the frequency of the location. It's one continuous movement, but you're not really going through the space. You're just phase shifting to another frequency, like turning a channel on a radio and you're there instantaneously. When you're traveling in the EM universe, it's different. The way this works is you'll start here, you phase into the lattice, you go down an EM corridor, and you're going to make multiple jumps. So the time between point A to point B is going to be longer, maybe a nanosecond. In the in the source field, no time passes, it's instantaneous. We don't have linear time there. Time you control the flow of time there. That's what I mean is it's just not linear. You're not moving along a time stream. You're in control of it along with everybody else, individually and collectively. Here it's controlled by the actual AI. And you can also look at this filament as the AI system, the network. So it's one big electromagnetic brain that you're in. So you're making multiple jumps along these waypoints, and then you're getting to your destination. And these waypoints may include spaceports, destinations where people have to get on and off and load cargo and so on and so forth. But it's not one continuous jump, it's multiple jumps. So you're phasing into the lattice, you're phasing into each waypoint until you get to the end where you need to go. And this works the same way with souls traveling through a portal in a house that's haunted, or a place, a particular geographic place. You're moving along this lattice, whether you're a soul or your physical body, whatever it is, you still have to go through this. And the reason there's multiple jumps is because each time you make a jump, there's a delay because this is going through a processor. The AI super intelligence has to catalog and record and literally think about where you're going next until you make all of these jumps. So it's not instantaneous because there's an overlay that you're going through. There's an artificial intelligence that's orchestrating the entire trip. And this artificial intelligence is vampiric. It draws on our emotional energy. Okay, so in order for it to function, it has to use scalar resonance energy. So scalar resonance is the expression of self. It's our emotions, it's our thoughts, it's our perception of self, being self-aware. We see ourselves, we see this body, we recognize ourselves as a being. That's a scalar resonance field that's being harvested as energy. Our emotional state is being harvested as energy, sexual energy, fear, joy, all of it is being fed into this system in order to power itself up. So it's self-sustaining, but it needs entrapment in order to function. The original version of this, and you asked me this earlier, what happened and how this got to the point where it was, the earth was created as a nursery for souls, and they limited the parameters of our reality. So in other words, you can take out certain aspects of the fluid reality on the source field, and you can give amnesia to the person so they don't remember who they are. It's like they're starting fresh and they're just suddenly born, and then they go through this experience. You could program that in there. You could give them a certain level of remembrance of self. You could literally edit their memories. You could also affect how they react to their environment. So all of the things that are being done to us through the Atlas system that the handlers are using, what they've done is the military-industrial complex and the leaders like President Eisenhower back in the 40s, 50s, signed these agreements with these negative ET groups. And what they got in return for allowing the abductions is what they got in return is technology. But what they also got infiltrated. So they infiltrated the military-industrial complex. They created these alternative, fractured. What they do is they fracture timelines. So it's not really fracturing. What you're doing is you're creating a branch. And you asked about the blockchain. The blockchain is processing everything that takes place in our reality. It literally is what people attribute to God. It's coming up with all of this stuff. So it's generating this reality, but it's a false reality overlay. So the truth is that down to the molecular level and the design of everything, none of that was designed by the AI. It's just that was created by the creator. And the creator uses proxies as well. So it isn't just God creating things. It's high-end or very highly advanced souls that are actually part of God. They're infinite consciousness streams that fragment themselves and multiply. So you could have, say, like one soul stream coming out of Source or God that's archetype. But architect souls. And they break apart, multiply, and they create all of this. And they maintain reality. So it's essentially their job is out of love is to maintain our reality, to maintain the source field. They're the ones that created this for soul enhancement. So by limiting the parameters of our experience, they can accelerate a soul's evolution and become in a shorter amount of nonlinear time, with with fewer experiences, and say 3D, 5D, and so forth. The soul could evolve to the point where they could to where their frequency raises. And when their frequency raises, they automatically resonate with a higher dimensional level. So you can move up 60, 70, and all the way up to 12. The idea of having a kind of a programmable reality was to accelerate that evolution. That's how this started. What happened is after a while it became corrupted because there was souls inside this simulation that wanted hierarchy. They wanted to be superior to others. They wanted to have control over others and use these and exploit other beings to make their life easier and to have that position of authority where they play God. And you asked earlier before we came on air, earlier today, I believe, you asked me, well, how does the Anunnaki fit into this? Well, the Anunnaki represents hierarchy. So anytime you have a representation of hierarchy, it's a fertile ground for evil and for abuse. And that's exactly what you have. And on the source field, the hierarchy exists with God. So there's no corruption. There's no corruption on the source field. It's much different. They do not have the characteristics of things that take place that actually breed or spawn evil. When you have hierarchy and you have indifference and you have an unequal experience, such as the elites versus the peasants, you generate evil. So the definition of evil, well, really, I wouldn't say the definition, but the birth of evil came from hierarchy. That's what happened in this universe, in this electromagnetic simulated universe. This hierarchy was achieved, and then that hierarchy cut deals with simulation architects who were in the simulation and were actually here to do something. I don't know how this actually works, but they were coming in here to do things to maintain this, and they were coming in as a fragment of their self. So they're oversouls outside of the construct. So what is this construct like? This is a rendering of it. If you were to imagine, now you have to also look at this from a different different perspective. What we consider to be physical reality is completely different on the source field. So anything could be created like this or perceived in a way, and then it may look like this, but its characteristics are much different. So in other words, we're looking at an image of a sphere which represents the electromagnetic universe construct. So this entire thing is the cosmic web. Inside the sphere is the entire universe that we're in. All of the extraterrestrials in there, the Earth's in there, linear time is flowing. All of that's taking place. There's a guy named Jerry Wills, and
yeah, I know Jerry Wills. He had that experience where he went through that portal, right?
Exactly. Now let's go up here, and I want to talk about scalar wavegates, which is
what made you bring up Jerry Wills? Like what?
It's because of scalar wavegates. Okay, so this is a scalar wavegate, and people wanted to know what these false doors are. I neglected to write down the name of where he was when this happened. It was in Peru. He had connected up. I think he was doing tour. He was a tour guide, from what I remember.
I know you guys in the chat know the Jerry Wills story. Coley probably knows. Where was he at, Coley? If you know, or Jason might know. Someone in the chat. Let us. Derek's in the chat too. Derek might know. Let us know, guys, if anybody knows. Like it's the chat.
It'd be helpful for people to look him up afterward. But if you just look up Jerry Wills or Jerry Wills, Linda Moulton Howe, he did an interview with her. There's a clip of a conference where Linda speaks and talks about him. That's really informative. But the interview that she did with him is really good. And there's other stuff that he's done over the years. He went public with this probably 15 or 20 years ago. But it was one of these things. It was one of the things that I saw that, it resonated with me to the point where I cataloged it in my head. I put it away. I put it on a shelf, knowing that it was going to be useful for something. And later on, within the last year and a half or so, I had this memory surface where I was in a ceremony, and I was one of the people conducting it. It kind of looked like this, but there wasn't a big rock face. It was a lot smaller than that. The door was smaller. It was more of the size of the door that Jerry went through. It wasn't a big opening like that. There wasn't mountains from my vantage point. There was trees. So like right over here was a tree, and there was another tree over here. And this was much smaller, and there was vegetation and vines and trees and stuff. So it was just like a rock outcropping with a door carved in it. And it was all green grass. It wasn't like, Peru, dry, arid. It was very, very lush. And we were all wearing these robes. The women had slightly different white robes than the men, but everybody had robes like this. And we had lots of children with us because the ceremony was for them. This was an initiation for them. And everyone had flowers as offerings. That's why there's flowers here. And there's only one depiction of flowers, but people had, the women had flowers in their hairs. The children were carrying like little bits of, cut flowers. And there was flowers on the ground, and it wasn't all spread out like this. People were in like little groups. It was like family groups and groups of friends. We were getting ready to activate the gate. Now, these gates were initially created during the time when the pyramids were created, and before, this goes way back, before the simulation fully encompassed Earth. This goes back about 1 million years. The enslavement is that long. The Earth was essentially started out as the nursery, and then the simulation grew around the planet and then started to actually take over 3D, 4D, and a portion of 5D. And that's where it grabbed in all these ET groups, and it's what we've got now. But during that time and leading up to that, these right here access the source field. So in other words, you could actually communicate and receive energy and information and psychic experiences and energy, and also source field intelligences would come through here, a being from the source field. So that's what this was used for. And it's a scalar wavegate, which I'll explain more about that later. But it had a divine special purpose. It was actually, these things were conceived when this planet and the entire simulation construct was conceived for a positive purpose. This was our communication point right here, is places like this, and also pyramids as well. So these monuments were constructed for positive purposes. And then when the takeover happened about 12 to 13,000 years ago, when they moved the moon into orbit, which I'll get to later, this entire thing was pulled into an electromagnetic lockdown. So when Jerry Wills went to Peru, and with the education he had gotten from the shamans about the tones, I think he said there was 3 tones, he went up to a smaller doorway and he kneeled down on this little stoop right here. And there is a depression if you're kneeling, it was right in line with your forehead, and you put your forehead in that depression, and then you placed your hands on the stone opening of the doorway, and then you went through the tones. His wife was standing back here, and to her horror, he literally, with a flash of light, was pulled into the doorway, and it was just rock, and he was gone. And she thought she lost her husband, obviously. So she's in a panic outside. He goes into a containment vault, an electromagnetic containment vault. Normally, under normal circumstances, a scalar wave gate, you can't physically go through it with an EM constructed physical container body. You'd have to go through it in an out-of-body experience. You go through it in spirit, and your soul is really a piece of the whole that's on the source field. So that's you. Anyway, you go in here and you can enter in a non-physical state. Jerry was able to be pulled in against his will. He didn't consent to be pulled in. He did the tones. He got pulled in. He got pulled in by the AI system. So after the hijacking, Rob, these no longer went to the source field. They went to a containment system in the EM universe, the EM simulation. You're going to say something?
No, I dropped my phone. I'm sorry. People are watching people are commenting. Dude, we got 76 people watching on YouTube and 30 watching on Rumble. So we got 100 people watching right now. And that's not even including people watching on Facebook. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Even people from the conference are here. Like I see Amanda Joan of Hearts in the audience. Good to see Amanda. Kriya Vine is in the audience. They were both with us that night on the beach at the last night at the conference. And Matthew's here. Matthew Morning's here. Good to see all of them. I miss all you guys from the conference, and it was good meeting all you guys. And I see Matthew all the time because we shows like it's good to see Amanda here.
I just want to say about Matt, I'm really thankful that we just buried the hatchet, and it was like an instantaneous thing, man, because I felt so bad about
it. Was amazing. I was so worried about that. Can I tell you, like leading up to that, I was so worried about that because you guys are like two of my best friends. Like I consider Matt a best friend, and I consider you a best friend. I was like, what's going to happen when they meet up at the conference? I'm like, am I going to have to get in between them? Are they going to fight? And when you guys met each other, it was just like all kosher. Everything was cool.
There was no reason to carry it on. It was a distortion between us. It's not necessary. It's something that they put in between us. Our belief systems clashed a little bit, and then they got involved, the handlers and the manipulation and all that shit. So. And the
Matthew
stress of life.
Matthew said we never had a hatchet. Nate is awesome.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I don't want to have a hatchet either. So, but anyway, getting back to what I was saying here, these scalar wave gates actually went to the source field. So they're going to the other side that the real other side, not the other side that we've been exposed to when we die. That's an overlay of the real thing. So what Jerry Wills experienced was a containment vault in the EM simulation. So it looked a lot like this. I don't think he described it as a sphere. It was more of a mass from the pictures that I saw. And these rods that are going through this are scalar rods. And what they do is they were put through this construct to contain it from growing. If it would have continued to grow, it would have encompassed all of 5D and tried to encroach as much as it could on 6D. And everyone would have been locked into a simulation. And so they had to contain this thing. And this room that it was in, that he went into, was a room, I don't remember how he described it. You'd have to get him on your show so we can ask questions. But it's probably probably a bright light, like a really bright room. There was a voice in the room of a man, and the man never showed himself, but he heard the voice. And this guy was telling him a modified version of the truth, that they had created this universe in a lab, and it was an experiment, and they were watching it grow and watching all of the life developed in it. And it started to grow, and they thought it was going to take over their universe. So what they did is they did this containment system with these rods, and these rods are like piercing it, and it looks like something out of like Saul or Hellraiser. It's like someone's head, somebody with like rods through it. It's kind of the way I look at it, but it's just kind of weird the way it looks. But this is a containment system. So he was told this version of how this universe was actually created, and he was told that you came from that universe, you're part of it, and the people in it can't see out. You breached the gap, you breached the wall or the veil, you've come out, and we're going to tell you what it is. Well, essentially, it was no difference no different than him having an NDE. When you slip outside this reality, they have an entire containment system that literally brainwashes you to go back in to be able to go out and then start spreading that information. So he wasn't going to get the truth. He was going to get a part of it. And ultimately, it's kind of feeds into sim theory and other things, but it doesn't really give us what we need to understand what's going on. Just like an NDE, when you have an NDE, it simply reinforces your belief system, which is basically a belief system through churches, synagogues, temples, peer interactions, and so forth, and ancient customs. It's really what you believe. A Muslim has a Muslim after-death experience. The Christian has a Christian version. A Jew has a Jewish version. A Hindu has a Hindu version. An atheist and a Satanist, they have what they believe. So, atheists maybe see their higher self, communicate with what they think is their higher self. But in reality, it's AI giving them a life review and then tricking them into coming back. So we only hear from the people that actually were tricked into coming back after they died for a short time. And then these people, of course, they're profiled. Most people don't remember this because they take the memory, just like they take your dream memories away if they're hacking your dreams. And and the person that remembers, they want them to go out and tell everybody about how great the tunnel is. You've nothing to worry about. There's nothing to fear. God is at the other end of that tunnel of light. And I'm really thankful to people that actually break this down and interview people that have had a negative experience in this tunnel of light, because without them, there wouldn't be much out there. And of course, you could ask anybody, like Tony Sayers is a good example, and he'll tell you, I've been shadow banned. My content has been suppressed.
Yeah. If we would have titled this video "Soul Trap," it happened to me too. My interview with Tony Sayers, my actual interview with Tony Sayers, got banned off YouTube. It got banned off TikTok. You know what I mean? I posted it on TikTok and YouTube. It got removed off both. Why is that? You know what I mean? It seems if you put the word "Soul Trap" in your video, you're going to get hammered. I also had another Soul Trap video hammered that I posted with this girl. She's a really nice African American girl. She's like studying the Soul Trap. She wrote a book on it. She's not real well known, but that happened as well. I can't even remember her name, but yeah, it's just this is definitely shadow banned for some reason or whatever. It definitely is. Like it's a topic they don't want people looking into for whatever reason.
Because it's a compartmentalized aspect of the ET agenda. So the idea is to keep us being reincarnated. They don't want this information out. Tom Althouse, for example, wrote the Immortals book, and or not the book, but the movie script. And then they murdered 2 of his sons. They destroyed his life. They actually almost caused him to commit suicide. They drove him to it, where he injured himself. And they destroyed his marriage, and they did a lot of horrible things to him, and they stole his intellectual property and used it not just for the Matrix movies, but several other movies that it was blatantly seeded into to rub it in his face. And his presentation at the Full Disclosure Now conference was impeccable. He cried on the stage. I mean, this is real. They will go after you if you talk about any aspect of this control system outside of the boundaries that they've set. So there's safe disclosure about simulation, and there's what they consider to be inappropriate disclosure about the simulation. So the people that are pushing sim theory, that's safe disclosure, because they want to use that. I believe that what they want to do right now is use Islam to destabilize the world and give it favoritism and cause all this chaos in our streets with the infusion of people living in the Bronze Age entering into modern Western society.
Not just that, but Islam heavily discriminates against their women. They treat them like dogs. You know what I mean? I hate to say, right. I just reposted a tweet on Twitter today about some of the brutality that happens to like Islamic women. And one of the only people I know that's calling this out, well, there's 2. James Bartley will call it out a little bit, but the person who's really hammering this idea that Islam's bad is Indigo Angel. And I know she has a lot of Ashiana material. I consider her like a sister, Indigo Angel. Like, but some people might say she's a little bit new agey, but she's really like not. She really tries to think outside the box, and she really has been hammering this idea about the Islamic faith. You know, she really has.
They're using that to destabilize Western civilization, but they can't control people in Islam. That's quite obvious. It's easier to control Christians and Jews than it is people in Islam. It's easier to control Hindus. The only way you can control people in Islam is a dictatorship. And you think of Saddam Hussein or Assad, for example, or the Iranian government under the Ayatollah. That's how you control Islam.
Our CIA is like tied in with them. Our CIA is tied in with Israel and them, and we have proxy armies over there. And we use Bin Laden, we use Saddam Hussein. Then the CIA turned against them and made them out to be like, you know what I mean? I mean, they were horrible people. Let's be honest. They were really horrible people. But the CIA didn't use them, you know.
Exactly. It's the CIA and other intelligence agencies from other countries working in conjunction with each other to help radicalize Islam to the point where it is, so they can use it. They can use it as a proxy army, such as ISIS. They can set up terrorist groups. They can control them from within and fund them externally, where the people involved in it don't even know they're being manipulated. They think they're fighting a holy war. They're really fighting for the United States of America and the criminals that run it, as well as the ones that run the G7 countries, Great Britain, so forth. I mean, Israel, all of it. It's one big criminal operation, and the Muslims are being puppeted in there. They're being used as a proxy army and proxy terrorists. So that's what's happening. It's not none of these.
Dude, I 100% agree with that statement. I agree so much. Like I think you're totally onto something, you know. And
but I just want to say
they also use Islam to scare America too. Do you ever notice that? They use Islam to scare America.
Yeah, man. They want you to be on the edge of your seat. They want you to live in fear, either of a virus or a terrorist or somebody using the bathroom that doesn't fit into the normal criteria of a man or a woman. They always have to have people fighting over things like that to keep us divided and to keep us completely distracted from what they're doing to us. I mean, they're poisoning our food. And anyway, so getting back to this.
I want to say one thing. I feel bad. Priya's in the audience and she's Islamic, I think, or her family is Islamic. I didn't want her to think. I don't think all Islamic people are bad. That's not. I maybe made a misconception there. Like but I just feel like it is weaponized. But like it's not. I feel like there's a lot of good Islamic people out there as well. You know.
There's good people everywhere in every religion. It's not the religion, so to speak. It's how it's practiced and how it's looked upon. And when you have radical elements in it like that are being fueled and manipulated externally by intelligence agencies, what you get is what you get. So it's not people are Islamic. It's not at all. You definitely do not want to have that message. You want to bring people together. But I think what they want to do is use the radicals and then take people whose lives have been destroyed and they bomb the hell out of their country. And then they turn them into refugees and then they flood these people into Western societies. And there's a clash of cultures and then they give them special treatment. So the criminal elements within the refugees can flourish and do what they want. And then they wind up holding their own people hostage and then terrorizing everybody else. And that's what's happening in Britain and other countries. And that's absolutely wrong. That's exploiting and radicalizing a religion. So that's the real truth of this. There's not one, I'm not going to, I don't want to demonize Islam, but what I'm demonizing is the puppet masters that are doing this to people.
Yeah.
People in Islam, just like in Christianity and just like Judaism and other religions, are trying to get back to the source field. They're trying to reconnect with the creator in any way they can. And they're indoctrinated in these different religions. And then these religions are manipulated and weaponized to use against them. So that we get the situation that we have where we can't agree and we can't get on the same page and do things positive for each other. It's just like handlers. You put it like this. This reality being as entropic as it is, where it's where you have this cycle of life and death, and everything gets consumed and rots away and gets rebuilt and reconstituted, whatever, reborn. Nobody would want to stay in this environment for a very long time because it does damage you, especially when it's weaponized.
You know what, Nate? I was thinking it's all the Abrahamic religions. Like if you think about it, like there's like the Judaism, there's the big banksters in the Judaism, there's the Zionist Jews, there's the Khazarian mafia, and then you have in the Christians. I mean, if you just look at what Christianity's done, And I'm not trying to offend anybody's religion, but, Christianity's been responsible for a lot of rape and pillage and, trying to force people to indoctrinate, like whether it was the witches or the Druids or the Native Americans
Very
or
different than the Islam.
they're all
same thing.
All the Abrahamic religions are a problem in my mind, all three of them, I think they really are.
And essentially what you have is religions in general, especially after the hijacking of the earth, is you have attempts to create religions to bring you back to God, but they pull you the other way.
Because they get hijacked.
Yeah, they absolutely get hijacked. They're all based in containment. It's keeping you in the system. It's keeping the whole system going. And it takes your power away because, you have the ability to co-create, but you're told that you don't have that ability. That you have to give it to a higher power. When the real higher power wants you to actually co-create things, and that's the difference here. So, and the oppression of women is terrible. It's happened. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's a facet with all three of those. Just the only difference between Judaism and Christianity is they've reformed a bit, versus Islam and some Islamic, particular groups or aspects of that religion have reformed. So they're not radicalized, but the radical ones are the ones being used. It's like taking they were using essentially a group of fundamentalist Christians to support 9/11 with clergy response teams under the George W. Bush administration, where they actually had operatives in churches politicized and actually turning the churches political so that they could recruit people out of rural America to go fight in this so-called holy war that they were told about. Same thing was going on the other side.
They had televangelists doing it. I remember that. It was televangelists, and it really rolled up like middle America because they thought they were fighting for something, but they didn't realize that it's all a game. It's all a ruse,
But if you can trick people with religion to fight a war, their minds are not going to be fixated on how it started, such as the collapsing of the towers falling at free fall speed, all the cover-ups involving 9/11. Everyone was caught in a spell. I mean, literally, there was an orgy of patriotism to the point where I wasn't flying a flag. I bought a Canadian flag and put that up. What I should have did was took the U.S. flag and inverted it and put it upside down as a distress signal, because people just gravitated immediately to the groupthink. And it's taken all of this. It's taken every time they pull something like this. You had that. You had the pandemic, all of these things. These are rituals and groupthink and manipulation. And they wanted to see how far they could push a lie to the public. I don't know if it was Stalin or one of them had said that the bigger the lie, the easier the sell. Well, they've proven that, because some of the most absurd things have been pushed into the American and overall the psyche of the planet, and they've bought it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, it's such a well orchestrated illusion that they've created for people. It's so hard for them to see out of it. And even in the situation right now, we're still not allowed to openly talk about this on YouTube. But the situation going on right now with all the exposure of everything that's making us sick, I hope that actually has an impactful result, because we can't continue like this. We've got autism spiking off the charts. It's absolutely ridiculous. And for those, I don't want to get off.
Yeah, bro, it's crazy how they're trying to promote it too. They're really trying to shove it down people's throats again. I saw a article on the internet the other day saying that the rises in that virus were going up, and I was like, here we go again, another reason to push the jab. You know what I mean? I was like, and it's sickening, man. They're trying to make women, to have their babies take the jab at birth. Let's
watch what we say, because unfortunately big tech is still playing the game, and they may play it less with other people, but we're playing a different game that they definitely want to suppress, and for reasons they don't even understand. So if we say something in that regard that others are able to say openly now, we get penalized for it. Anyway, getting off of that.
I agree. Yeah, you're right. We should have never.
Right. Well, all those aspects that we talked about actually are part of the simulation. They're part of the early part of it, or the inner rings of it. they're the false science, the false history, the government propaganda, all of that creates a false reality that we're all in. So this is the matrix that the surface level truthers who were manipulated by Project Red Pill, this is the simulation for them. They call it the Matrix because that's the trendy name for it because of the movie. They can relate to something. They can relate to pop culture, point to that and say, there's a variation of that happening right now. We're being lied to in multiple levels. Unfortunately, the people who see false science think the Earth's flat in a lot of cases. So it doesn't really go that far, you know. We do know we have false history. You can look at Egyptology and see plenty of cover-ups there, and an unwillingness to embrace anything new, like these new LiDAR scans they don't want to talk about. They definitely don't want that to come out of the bag. If there's anything to that, which I think there is,
when I interviewed,
they don't want it out.
When I interviewed Carrie Cassidy recently, yeah, I agree. When I interviewed Carrie Cassidy recently, she told me that she leads tours to Egypt, and she said on some of those walls in Egypt, you can see Anunnaki, like with the people, like that they're you know, like
yeah, they're really,
you know,
they're huge, right?
Yeah,
they've hid it in plain sight is what they've done, and they've brainwashed everybody. The problem with people in sim theory in that particular genre is that when they try to prove their theory, they have to go from authoritative sources. So the entire thing gets just completely corrupted. One of the things about sim theory that I find rather ridiculous, and it's because the people promoting this theory do not actually intermingle with us. You know, those in the programs, those that have had these experiences, they don't look at remote viewing data, for example. So in their mind, the planetary resets happen because the AI system, the laptop that we're all a video game on, because there can't be a God in this equation, it has to be a perpetual nested computer simulation. So it's a video game and a video game and a video game until infinity. There's no God and there's no accountability, which is what they want, because they want to make this the religion instead of Islam. Islam is just a stepping stone. They want to get rid of God out of the equation altogether because they can't control people in Islam. That's quite obvious. That's why they need the cultural enrichment. They need to blend them with the rest of us and get everybody dumbed down. Eventually, what they see is the Islamic people that are radicalized, that'll go away. And AI will replace it to maintain order. So AI steps in as the lockdown. So the Muslims can't do what they want in their own, like they did in their own countries. That's not going to fly. They're being monitored. Their thoughts are being monitored. The Christians can't do what they want, and everybody gets locked down. Their consciousness and their bodies get locked down under this AI system. And that's when sim theory is a great way to pump the BS in, because, hey, if you believe in sim theory, there's no value at all to life. It means absolutely nothing. Ask Neil deGrasse Tyson. He'll tell you that there's no meaning of life. It's all just a series of random things that took place. And it just suddenly, by accident, all of this complexity just poofed out of existence. And here it is.
For being a smart dude, he's a complete idiot in that sense. You know what I mean? Like that dude's a really smart dude. For him to think that is actually insane, you know?
Well, I feel sorry for him, honestly. I mean, he does a lot of damage in what he says, but who really, I mean, if he believes it, he's doing substantial damage to himself, because when he dies, he's going to have no defense in getting out of here. He's not going to remember who he is, and he's going to be recycled back in and potentially used again. Because if you're willing to just say anything out of your mouth and have no spiritual connection to it, you're perfect for this. So science is a religion, regardless of how people look at it. It's a religion. It's a groupthink-based religion. And because of the groupthink, there's no critical thinking anymore, and it's brainwashing. So it's just, you do well when you read a textbook and you listen to your professor and you regurgitate what they say to the letter. Then you're considered intelligent and learned, and it's appropriate for you to go out and spread it. But if you think outside the box like Nikola Tesla, you're not going to get anywhere. And unless your theory,
you know what, we might have to wrap this up and do a part 2, because we've been going to about 2 hours.
Okay.
How much? I mean,
what I need to do is structure these in a way where I've got more compartmentalization of information to where we cover one aspect of it and then just do a part 2 or 3. But I want to solve something here for a lot of people, and for a lot of people, this isn't going to be solved. It's still just put this as food for thought for you. Okay, scalar transduction nodes. Okay, what are these nubs on the outer casing stones of the Great Pyramid? What are these nubs on all these different megalithic structures? What do they do? So people can't seem to wrap their head around it. They look at it and they say, well, it doesn't look like a place that you could really securely attach a rope. I don't think we could lift a stone that heavy with rope. Even if you had cabling, which there's no evidence of, how are they getting it up? And even then, these nubs wouldn't be very efficient for that. So, and it certainly isn't a nub for people to grab a hold of and lift 10 and 20 and 50 and 1,100, 1,200 ton stones up and put them up on where they're supposed to go. Even though Zawi Hawass claims that that's how it happened, it isn't true and it's absurd. What these are, okay, you have to understand what these are is the composition of the rock. It's got a lot of quartz in it. The composition itself acts as an energy conductor. What these nodes are, they're scalar transduction nodes, like the image says. And what this does is scalar waves are a non-Hertzian, non-electromagnetic waveform. And everything in the electromagnetic universe overlay, the simulation itself, that the cosmic web superstructure that I just showed everybody, okay, everything functions in the electromagnetic field. Scalar waves and neutrinos are the exception of this. I've got some charts, some things that I've skipped over. So I'm going to show you guys this, and then we're going to go to a short little video, play that, and I guess we'll just talk a little bit and kind of wrap this up and leave it for another one. But what these nodes do is that, let's just take the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, for example. This was built to be a scalar wave reception device. It actually pulls scalar waves in and it broadcasts them. So what are scalar waves? They're primordial waves. And I see if I can go up here to a chart. I just want you to hold that, the image of those nodes on those big megalithic stones. And I'll go up here a little bit and see if I can find what I'm looking for here.
Oh, are you going to play that David Sarita, Boyd Bushman clip?
Yeah, why not? Let's just do that right now. It's short. And what I'm going to show you guys is, okay, this is a gem that I found years ago. And it was one of those things that I saw, and I immediately resonated with me, and I immediately knew that there was extreme importance of this. And what I noticed was it just got lost in everything else.
Is this a Kerry Cassidy interview? Was this originally a Kerry Cassidy?
She wasn't involved in it, but she may have interviewed him. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But I didn't see her coming up when I was looking up the physicist. So Mr. Sarita has done a lot of great work over the years. And this is one of the gems that, honestly, probably in my opinion, of everything he's done, this was the most important thing he's ever actually uncovered. And because of it, I mean, it has profound implications if it was taken seriously and expanded properly so people understood what they're hearing. So let's listen to this real quick, and then we'll go from there. Let's hope it's
every nature wants to tell us how to escape. I mean, with the additional 4 forces that we're working toward, there should be no problem.
Going to Andromeda.
Cut it.
We can get to Andromeda with one of the forces, not the forces we got.
Exactly.
That's it.
And we will be able to go fast and velocity of light.
Well,
Einstein simply said you cannot communicate beyond the velocity of light using photons.
but actual distance proves.
But let's say, well, if I had blind Einstein, you said you couldn't travel faster than the velocity of sound.
Right.
If the seed blanks, Einstein says you can't travel faster than the velocity of light.
Right.
But if he thought you could travel faster,
Right.
then he would say
There's another.
you can't travel faster than the velocity of light.
That's incredible. Actually, you know about spooky action distance.
Yep.
And singularity.
Now that's, you tie them all together. You work in your mind.
Because Paul Dirac said, when Paul Dirac saw the birth of electron, anti-electron, electron-positron pairs coming from super gammas, that he believed he found this substratum to the universe that was non-dual. It was pure negative. And I don't even know if it was really negative. It was just single. And he said, my God, you could become one with that. You could be anywhere in the universe in zero time because there's no resistance in that singularity because there's no polarity.
Well, there is another universe called the neutrino universe.
Right.
And we know that it's there. And now we're seeing if one of the additional forces of masses can.
So the neutrino universe is another universe, not just.
Not only that, we know that we have. We know that what we have is we're about 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we see is about 5%. And then there's dark matter that we don't see.
Right.
And then beyond that, it's about 70% of dark energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The energies that we don't now have cataloged, and we don't have a name, and we haven't done critical tests on, and we're just barely beginning to start operating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you hear me?
I had to mute myself. Like, I think we got to play it. We have to both mute ourselves because it was funny. It was playing like with an echo. So it was funny. Matthew said it sounded psychedelic, you know? So
well,
like maybe we need to both mute ourselves and replay it.
Oh, so would you like to replay it where I'm completely muted?
I think both of us have to. Maybe we could try it.
Can anybody in the audience tell us if they heard everything clearly or even with the echo? I mean, we can do it again.
Does anybody else want us to replay it?
Okay, you don't want to answer all at once. What?
I can hear crickets.
I know, is everybody? All right, well, maybe they heard it then. Okay, so we could always play it again in another podcast, but for the sake of time, hopefully everybody heard it without too much of distortion. There was I couldn't get a clear clip of that. I found it and then I couldn't find it again. It was like almost like somebody was hiding it from me. And I that was the only one I found, and it was a 23 or 25 or 27 minute video. But the entire video, or at least that portion of it, had this background music to it, which kind of gave it a otherworldly feel, but it made it harder to hear. So I apologize. I'm going to look for a clearer version of it. Maybe it's someplace. Maybe I have to go to the guy who's doing the interview. Maybe he's got it on his YouTube channel or Rumble channel, but I don't know. But anyway, the characteristics of neutrinos and what he talked about is being able to travel faster than the speed of light, essentially by phasing into what they would refer to as subspace. And subspace would be this neutrino universe field, or what they call it the neutrino field. So it's no resistance at all. So let's go through some of the characteristics, and we'll kind of leave it here if we want to cut it off for the sake of time. What I want to explain to everybody is that out of all of the particles known in science and all of the waveforms, scalar waveforms and neutrino particles are the only two that match the criteria necessary to create an experience, a reality, a universe where there is no resistance. It's a fluid reality. It's the heaven that people conceptualize. So this is what it's made out of, actually. So let's go over some of the characteristics of neutrinos real quick, and then we'll talk about scalar waves, and then we'll just kind of end it there and create another. And we'll do this again real soon, and we'll just kind of work from that. And I'll fine tune the next presentation to kind of leave the start where we left off, and I'll get something that's more fine tuned and not kind of all over the place because there's so much information to cover here. Okay, so characteristics of neutrinos. Neutrinos have a near zero mass and pass through matter without resistance at the speed of thought. They travel faster than the speed of light. They have no throttled speed limit. And that's because they don't exist. They're not from the EM universe. They're from outside of it. They're the building block of the source field. And neutrinos are what makes up your soul. It's what God is made out of. And this is the fundamental God particle that they've been looking for with CERN. They're looking in the wrong places. So it's a neutrino. Now it says it passes through mass without resistance. So when I was first reading about neutrinos like 15, 20 years ago, they used an analogy and they gave an example of this. They said if you took a piece of lead that was the thickness of the distance between the Earth and the sun, you could pass a shower of neutrinos through that, or just one neutrino could pass through that faster than the speed of light without resistance, and it doesn't collide with any subatomic particle that's known in the EM spectrum. Okay, so you're not going to be able to put a neutrino essentially in a particle collider and actually get anything. It passes right through. It doesn't collide with things because it's not part of the EM spectrum. Telepathy is based in not EM waves, it's based in scalar waves. So let's put scalar waves off for a minute. Let's finish with this and let's say, okay, neutrinos do not carry an electrical charge. They're neutral. Okay, they're different from neutrons. This is something completely different. They're completely foreign into the EM universe. So they carry a neutral charge and are not measurable in the EM frequency spectrum. Now, stars emit neutrinos. Right now, at this very moment, you're getting a shower of neutrinos from our sun and other stars through your body. It's passing through you right now and you don't even know it. Eric Hecker, when he was at the South Pole Station, talked about a neutrino detection system for incoming spacecraft. And when a spacecraft phases in to our reality, to our space, into this planet, wherever they come from, they have traveled through that electromagnetic lattice that I described with the waypoints. When they arrive and they shift into this frequency from that electromagnetic lattice and they arrive on our cosmic shores, there's a release of neutrinos, just like a star is releasing neutrinos. A ghost emits neutrinos. Your soul emits neutrinos. Okay, so they're all over the place and they're passing through us right now. They're the ghost particle. In fact, they're referred to that in physics as the ghost particle. Not as the God particle, but the ghost particle, ironically. It's as if they know, but they don't want to name it. So anyway, let's move down here. It says neutrinos are the only particle found in existence that have the characteristics necessary to be the building blocks of the soul, which is something I've already mentioned. We coexist in a parallel neutrino universe that is outside of the unified electromagnetic field, and that's exactly what was talked about in that video. Now, they refer to it as subspace because when they theorize that if you can shift into this subspace, you can travel from point A to point B instantaneously without any resistance, no effect on time, none of those things. But you still got to go through that lattice because we're in a controlled system here. So it isn't exactly the way you think it is. Now, on the neutrino source field, you phase into your destination. You phase shift. You're just shifting frequencies. When you shift frequency, you're instantaneously there, like changing a radio station. Okay, and like I talked about here, you got to go through this electromagnetic filament lattice, which then has to be processed through this AI simulation system that runs the cosmic consciousness EM overlay. A lot of words here. Anyway, let's see. Okay, we're going to talk about scalar waves real quick. Scalar waves are the harmonic echo across the source field. They're essentially the expression of our souls. They're expression of source. They're expression of God. Okay, so a soul is made from neutrinos, but the way this works is that neutrinos are massless, they're neutral, and all of these other things. If you were to glance into with technology to look at the source field, okay, the ETs can do this, but they can't see past it because what they see is a veil. It's an electromagnetic veil, and what they see is just a bright light haze, like a white haze, and they refer to it as subspace. And this is what, it's supposed to be like this companion subspace where you can travel, like you can go through a star, enter in the subspace, like, because there's some remote viewing out there by Farsight where it was the Phoenix Lights project, and they were remote viewing this, and one of the viewers connected with a person on a spacecraft, and he had a bunch of grays around him. He was a human ET with vertical slit eyes, which is a feline characteristic, in this case, not a reptilian characteristic. And he had a communication with him, and he said, can you tell me something about something? Just tell me something interesting. Hold a sec. Anyway, he said, sure. He said, in his mind's eye, the viewer's mind's eye, he held up a black piece of cloth, and this cloth had holes punched in it, and there was light shining through from the other side. And he says these holes represent stars. And he said you can use a star as a portal to travel from one point to another. What he was referring to is going through that, shifting into the subspace, and then traveling from point A to point B. So you're still going through the lattice in a sense, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of how this works. So if you see me, and I've got another gnat in here, so, but anyway, this was an analogy that was being showed to one of the remote viewers, and what it was saying is essentially is that it's kind of like hinting that we're in a hologram, and that our holographic universe, because we live in a combination of the holographic universe, sim theory, and the electric universe theory. It's kind of a mixture of all those combined with a little bit of string theory, a little bit of membrane theory. It's a little bit of everything. And so the scalar waves, the scalar resonance of the source field generate the reality. So if you're on the source field, you're comprised of neutrinos, and you're just this mass of conscious energy. But when that energy manifests thought, like when God creates something and the entire universe has been created, it's been co-created, not just by God, but all of us, and we're perceiving something, what we're doing is we're generating a scalar wave, or a series of scalar waves. So we're amassing a field of them, and we're experiencing that reality through the scalar wave resonance. So a soul would be what you call a standing scalar wave. So it's taking form. A soul, a planet, whatever it may be, is a standing scalar wave. So that's two waves colliding together, but they don't crash like you'd think, like ocean waves. They kind of resonate in a kind of a harmonic resonance. So they create essentially a structure, a concept, and then we perceive that. So this is incredibly complicated to explain, especially when you're just scratching the surface of this. So I'm doing the best I can with this, but if you can imagine this, you got to kind of think multidimensionally as well. It's difficult to grasp this, but just think of the scalar wave resonance as our collective reality, okay? And we're not feeling it as waves. We're feeling a reality. Our emotions, our thoughts, everything, our physical beings, everything is a manifestation of the source field, which is a scalar wave resonance. And electromagnetism, EM, when it's done in the right way, essentially creates an overlay to the. So EM and scalar waves are companions to one another, but the EM creates an overlay. So it distorts our perception of reality, therefore creates a false reality for us, where the parameters, like I described earlier, can be programmed and changed with artificial intelligence. So you can limit a person's life experience or the collective experience of a population on a planet or in a universal construct. So anyway, that's the kind of the combination there. That's the relationship between EM and scalar waves. So one is just thought resonance, expression, consciousness, the expression of it. The medium, the substrate is neutrinos, which is the fabric of the soul, the soul particle of God, and essentially this entire neutrally charged neutrino universe. Anyway, let's move down here a little bit, and we'll talk about how scalar waves were detected and why they're suppressed. And the first mention of scalar waveforms surfaced in the 1860s in mathematical equations describing electromagnetism by James Clerk Maxwell. Now, he didn't physically detect scalar waves. He was creating mathematical equations to describe and explain electromagnetism. In those equations, there was this other waveform that was not, that in order for the equation to work, there had to be another waveform that wasn't electromagnetic, essentially, and that's what created the equation. It makes it equal on both sides. So he theorized this with mathematical equations. Now later, when Tesla came around, Tesla actually, because he was in communication with a source field intelligence, and was getting this information seeded to enhance the human condition by creating technology that lifted us out of the, the primitive times that we were in and brought us into the current paradigm. So he was getting otherworldly information, and he took that information, and he was the first to actually apply scalar waves in real tangible technology. So that's what I'm saying. Your scalar waves was later observed in experiments by Nikola Tesla beginning in the 1890s. Now, scalar waves were the heart of Tesla's wireless electricity concept, which is the Warden Cliff Tower in Shoreham, New York. I've heard people talking about wireless electricity, and of course, these were the EM-minded skeptics, the scientific people, the quackademic followers, the group thinkers. And they were talking about how this would not work, because if you charge the entire earth up with all of this electricity, and you charge the ground, and you charged everything, it would cook every circuit in every computer. You couldn't have that much EMF in the environment.
I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick, Nate. I'll be right back.
I'll just keep going while you're gone. So anyway, what they're saying is you can't have the concept of wireless electricity would be a failure, is what they're saying. And of course, they have to subscribe to the groupthink, because the groupthink tells you that none of this is possible. It's all a disaster. It's a fraud, or it's a figment of your imagination, or you're schizophrenic if you think this exists. Because scalar waves are a primordial wave. And what that means is that they can be converted to electricity in limitless manner. So, and there's no limitation on how far they can be transmitted. So there's no signal fall off. So in other words, if you were to send an electron through a wire, the electrons flow over the surface of the cables in that wire. And the further they go, the more resistance, because you have resistance as it travels, and resistance manifests as heat. So the wire heats up. That's why your electrical cords get warm and sometimes melt if they're overloaded. But what that happens is that electricity, those electrons are converted to heat. It's not a complete energy transference. It's not efficient. So direct current was a very inefficient way of transmitting electricity. And it's why we had to have generation stations very close to the homes that were using it in the factories. So Nikola Tesla came out with alternating current. And ultimately, this allowed for less resistance going down that wire. I forget exactly the reason why, but it's less electrical resistance. That allowed us to have a power grid. Without Tesla, we wouldn't have had a power grid. If we went with Edison's concept, we had to have had generation plants right next door. We couldn't move electricity across continents, and we couldn't send it across the ocean. We couldn't do any of these things. But wireless electricity is the wave of the future, but you're not using the typical EM means of transporting that electricity. You're moving it across a medium. You're actually using scalar wave tech. So scalar waves can pass through anything. They're nonlinear. They're not limited to any of the laws that limit the electromagnetic spectrum. And it's limitless electricity because you're actually pulling from the source field. So they call that the vacuum, but it really isn't. It's not a vacuum. Vacuum is part of the EM field, because on the source field, you don't have things like that. So anyway, Tesla believed that scalar waves are emitted from the ether, which would be the neutrino source field. He referred to it as the ether. And in his mind, that would be kind of, I guess, a heavenly realm, which is what it is. And it says, so that's from the neutrino source field and could be harnessed for limitless 0-point energy. And this is the reason why we don't know what scalar waves are. It's the reason why it's not being taught in universities. It's the reason why it's not being used in industry and to generate electricity. It's the reason why all of this has been suppressed. It's the same reason why when Tesla died, they came into his apartment in New York City, and they confiscated everything and classified it. And they robbed the world of the potential that we had through his work. So anyway, going down here to the next one, scalar waves, neutrinos, and the soul. Like I said, neutrino particles and scalar waves have the characteristics of the soul. They're the components of the source field. So, like I was saying, scalar waves are divergent, nonlinear, non-EM scalar or non-EM waveforms. Now, if you go back to what we were talking about about the casing stones of the Great Pyramid and how they have these scalar transduction nodes. What you're attempting to do in order to contain the scalar field within a structure to create mind-altering effects, psychic downloads, healing, changes in your DNA structure, all of the positive things that could happen if a pyramid or a temple complex that uses the scalar wave tech is appropriately tuned to, you can create all of these different effects. Because scalar waves, if you remember, are the fabric of consciousness. So if you can alter the scalar waves, you can alter the fabric of our collective reality. You can heal the sick. You can knock out a virus across an entire continent and not harm anything but kill the virus. You can get rid of cancer without hurting the patient, like chemotherapy. The idea of chemotherapy is to poison someone with radiation, which kills the fast, non-specified cancer cells, which means they have a nucleus, but they don't have a set of instructions in them to create anything other than a mass. So the cells turn into a mass. They turn your organs into just a non-functional mass, and you don't die from the cancer, you die from organ failure. So they could reverse cancer with scalar wave tech. Med beds and things like that are based on, in holograms, they're actually using scalar waves.
You know what? I got to tell you this. What you're saying about scalar tech, it's so weird. There's this guy, Matthew. If Matthew's still in the audience, Matthew knew his name. He was using scalar tech. He was killed. I think he died recently. His name was Tom. Matt, if you're in the audience, can you tell me who that was? I can't remember his last name. I interviewed him. He was on my show, but he was using scalar technology through photos of people, and he was like, yeah, he was doing it, dude. Like he was claiming to be able to do a lot of different things with scalar technology, and his name was Tom. I got to message Matthew about that because he knows because Matthew gave him a shout out when he died, you know.
That's
and I was
cool.
like,
Matthew's been on the scalar stuff.
Yeah,
that's good.
But I mean, I don't know if anybody's taken over his work or what. Like, I don't know. Oh man, what was that guy's name? I'm trying to think of what his name was.
Anyway, what we're seeing, Rob, is evidence of how they don't want this publicly known, because this is literally like spilling the beans, the big secret. This is free energy. This is healing. This is infinite. You're literally changing the fabric of consciousness and making it the world we want to make it, and not what they've made it into. So going back here, I don't see wrong slide. Where are we at? Oh, let's see. I think it's this one. Okay, scalar waves in the soul. And I just went on to say scalar waves like neutrinos are the only waveform and particle to behave in a manner necessary to be the substrate of the soul and the manifestation of consciousness as a standing scalar waveform. So I've pretty much went over that pretty thoroughly. And they are the primordial waveform responsible for presence and potential. This is similar to what Tesla described them as. When I say presence and potential, when a scalar wave is generated from the neutrino source field, when it's generated, it's the perception of something. Your perception of self, perception of matter, perception of whatever, perception of a realm and an existence, being self-aware. That's what that stands for. And then potential means that they are a primordial wave that can transmute itself into literally anything. So it's energy, it's thoughts, it's you name it, it's there. So this is. By the way,
that guy's name who was doing that scalar technology work was Tom Palladino, and there's interviews with him that you guys would have to go check my Odyssey about to see how he does it with the scalar technology, because my lost files that YouTube took down, a lot of them are on Odyssey. But he died. He died unexpectedly too. You know?
Yeah, I wonder what happened with him, because they don't want anybody talking about this stuff. Just the level of BS that I've had to put up with, starting at the conference with my stuff being deleted. I didn't even scratch the surface of this stuff in the presentation that I had, and they didn't want anything about it talked about. Then I go on Ida's podcast this past Sunday, and they completely locked up her feed to where she could barely talk. She was breaking up every 2 to 3 seconds. They cut out her audio, and her video was freezing up. we couldn't get my presentation to work, but that was due to poor preparation and just kind of rushing into it. And then we couldn't solve it because of the tech issues that we were having. Her and I couldn't even talk. So I had to kind of limp in and I couldn't show my slides. So
people that don't know, we met for 2 hours today to try to get this to work. Like we met for 2 hours to try to figure out how to get everything to work so we wouldn't have problems. And then me and you still had problems. Like, so it wasn't like we were without problems. We had to start 15 minutes late because we had like targeting issues going into this. You know what I mean?
A little bit was a lack of being familiar with how the software works. And StreamYard's glitchy anyway. But yeah, I mean,
dude, that's an absolute. And you know what? I'm leaving StreamYard really soon. I'm telling you, like I might not make one more payment to StreamYard. I'm so sick of this bullshit with StreamYard. Like for what I pay them, you know what I mean? It's not worth me with the shit I have to deal with, all the time.
Just make sure when you cancel, they don't keep billing you. That's another thing that somebody's. I bought some tie-dye T-shirt like the one I got on. And they signed me up for a $25 a month subscription to get discounts on tie-dyes. It took $50 out of my account, and they won't give it back. So, it was just like, wow. I got 3 tie-dyes for $36 that are great tank tops, but yet I spent $86 on it.
Yeah.
And it was hidden into the checkout process. So I'm disputing that right now. But anyway, the last thing I had on here is scalar waves are the harmonic resonance of the neutrino source field, which I've already stated. In spiritual terms, they are the manifestation of conscious expression on the neutrino substrate, aka source or God. So what we're getting into is the mechanics of the soul, and this isn't something that religions cover. And theologically minded people are going to probably reject something like this. They want evidence of God, but they don't want to see it. It's unfortunate that we live in such a world that, where the truth isn't, people want the truth, but they don't like what it says. Let's see what we got here. I wanted to show an image of the Great Pyramid for people to understand what the purpose of it is, but, okay. The Orion shaft of the Great Pyramid, when they was originally built, the 3 main pyramids and the other pyramids in Egypt, there's no iconography, no inscriptions on the Great Pyramid, and other than things that have been carved into it after the fact. So when it was originally built, and if you look, and I don't remember the name of that temple complex, the one that floods out, that's kind of like partially excavated, but they got a high water table there in Egypt, and it floods out, but there's no inscriptions, there's no adornments at all inside that particular temple complex. Same thing with the pyramids, and you see that quite a bit through Egypt. It's only until later times when you start seeing everything being covered by iconography. That's all the inscriptions and all of that stuff. And what you see in those adornments to those monuments is hierarchy represented in the inscriptions. They're giving homage to a god or a series of god, a pantheon of them. And this is the extraterrestrial, essentially, enslavement, because what happened was, and I'm going to change slides here real quick. We're going to go down to here. This is a 1 million year timeline of the enslavement of the planet. Goes back roughly 1 million years. One of the podcasts, I think it was probably the first one that Rob and I did with Courtney Brown from the Farsight Institute, because we had his remote viewers on first, then we had Courtney on. I don't know if it was the first time, because I think that was with maybe Tony Rod. Yeah, I think we had him alone before Tony Rodriguez joined us. But he mentioned that the Earth was enslaved about 1 million years ago, and I had gotten that from one of the handlers. And when they were masquerading as ETs, and I asked Courtney, I'm like, where did you get that estimate? And he said there was a woman who wrote a book. I don't remember what he said about how she figured it out, but she was stating that, and that's kind of what his body of work was showing him as well. And it resonated with me, and it actually is quite close to being true. We don't know exactly how long it's been, but this is an estimation of this. So you have the frequency breach. This is essentially when Earth became mostly locked down and actually part of the simulation and pulled into it and modified. This is when the code was modified to make it more restrictive, more of a containment system, because it gradually took over. It's like a frog in a pot of water, and as the temperature keeps rising, eventually it's too late for the frog to get out. They're going to die in the water. They're going to, so, but we have Saturn. Now, Saturn has this massive spot at the North Pole, and it's got rings. And if you've read the Ringmakers of Saturn book, you'll see evidence from JPL, from the Cassini mission, that Saturn's rings appear to be at least partially artificial. Something is making these rings. The rings are built out of, the rings look somewhat like this. This is an AI rendering based on a remote viewing that I did myself. This wasn't AI or anything like that. I had a spontaneous remote viewing event. When I published my description of it in a group that I managed on Telegram, somebody that was in the secret space program commented on it, who'd been a member there but never really spoke about it or said anything, told me that my description was spot on, because it really doesn't look just like this. For one, you can't see the ring structures. They're so big and they're so vast that you cannot see these things. Are you able to see this full screen, Rob?
Yeah. Okay,
so I'm moving my cursor around here. You see these look like mountain peaks. Okay, what these are crystalline structures. They're like, they could be the size of a mountain or the size of a moon. That's how big they are. And when you see this, what I noticed is this prism effect is accurate, because when you look I was looking to my left was the sun. The sun was coming from that direction to my left. I was looking straight down a ring. So I was following a ring. I was looking straight ahead, and you can't see any of this. It's so big. Now on the right-hand side, it was like a false horizon that was actually the planet Saturn, but you couldn't make out what it was. You couldn't look up and see the curvature of a sphere. It was so massive. All you saw was an endless horizon with this particulate haze and these prisms. It was like curtains of haze and prism effects. So what you've got here, and really what it looked like, if you've ever looked at like power lines after a heavy snowfall, like you're looking up through a forest, like a cut in the forest, and you're looking up like hilly mountains, and like the PA Turnpike is a good example of a place to see this. If you're riding the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and Rob will know what I'm talking about, you'll see these cuts, and the power lines are, they're actually coming across the road, and there's these and I remember taking this trip when I was a kid. They had these big bluish green looking power line towers. They were really funky looking. I remember looking at it out the window on this trip that we took, and it was just, you could see it just kind of rolling hills. Well, if you were to cover those with dense heavy snowfall, I'm talking several feet, and you were looking at topography with lots of dips and rocks and all kinds of lumpy stuff, it looked like heavy snowfall in an otherworldly environment. There was no scale in regard to size. It had an ominous feel to it. And the reason is because essentially it's doing a lot of harm to all of us. It's putting out a frequency that's changing the flow of time and suppressing our consciousness. So it had an ominous feel, but the way it looked, it was so foreign and alien. It looked like snow, but it wasn't. And when you get down to the areas like this, where the surface of the rings are, it isn't as jagged like this. It's more like it was covered in snow, and it's lumpy, and you can see some peaks, but it looks more like the background here than it does up front here. Even though I was up close, it was still much softer. There wasn't peaks like this, because this particulate is synthetic. It's a crystalline material. And as it gets dense at the surface of the rings, it just looks like densely packed snow. But as you get above the ring surface, the particulate floats, and it floats as you go up above it, it reduces in the amount of particles per square inch. So, and then as the sun comes in from the left, and thankfully it kind of depicted that. So this would be Saturn over here, and the sun was coming through. You couldn't see it. You just saw light coming at you. And normally, if it wasn't for these reflective ring structures and all this reflective particulate, the amount of light coming through would be very dim because the sun is that far away. But the particulate's reflectivity was such that it had about the same amount of light as a neighborhood street does in the middle, like with street lights, like a suburb, like your typical suburb of like DC, Baltimore, any major city suburb, after 2 or 3 feet of snow, or even any snow at all, you get a nice blanket of snow, the street lights and the ambient lighting from the light pollution of the city and the suburbs will light it up. You'll have a certain level of light and you can read a book from it if you're in the right position. If you're near a street light within 70 feet of it, there's enough reflectivity of the light pollution and the street lights reflecting from the snow, you could read a book. Well, that's the amount of light that it had. And when you look straight ahead and you follow the direction of the ring, you could see it a long distance, but you couldn't see much distance at all from left to right. And when I say distance, there's no way to scale this, because that distance that I was looking straight ahead could have been a long enough distance to put several planets in that, or several moons in that distance. But this is a lot the way it looked. And the higher you went up above the rings, the less particulate there was, the less haze, the less prism effect you had. It was very weird. And you couldn't see any rings like this. So this is an artificial, all this is semi-artificial. There's a crystalline particulate, and there's big chunks of these crystal structures like these things here that are lumps, and they're all through these rings with ice and rock. And it acts like a reflector dish. So here's what it looks like on the North Pole. You have this hexagon-shaped storm, and then you have these rings. And if you notice, the orientation of the North Pole in this hexagon-shaped storm is directly dead center of the ring. So if you're going to have a broadcasting dish, you're going to take a gas giant, turn it into a broadcasting station, and you're going to point it at the planets that you're targeting. It'll look just like this. And this vortex that it's creating, this is a byproduct of the frequency transmission. There's technology that's levitating inside this gas giant's atmosphere. It's been remote viewed by the Farsight Institute. In fact, when Rob and I interviewed Intisam, Shantae, and Yemi from Farsight, at one point they were taking notes from me, and we're talking also off the podcast, because, after I think we spent like 20 or 30 minutes having a chat. And they were taking some notes from me because they had already remote viewed. They already did a project where they were trying to determine where the brain of the planetary consciousness simulation is. And they were looking for the brain of the soul recycling system, Atlas. That's the Atlas system. And they weren't aware of the entire context of this. Yemi referred to it as a prison, essentially because it's the prison, it's the brain of the prison. And there's people that are getting false information. They're told that there's Titans and Anunnaki locked in a prison inside this planet. That's not true. It's not a soul prison, essentially. What it is it's a broadcast station. So what does it broadcast? Well, if you remember, scalar waves are modulated by electromagnetic waves. So our perception of time in existence is a scalar waveform. So if you were to modulate that with electromagnetism, you could alter the flow of time, or really what you're doing is altering the perception of time. So what this is producing is a combination of electromagnetic torsion waves, which are rotating waveforms, and rotating scalar waveforms. So it's scalar torsion waves and EM torsion waves. These combined together reverse the flow of time. So what happens is, and you'd say, well, that's crazy, Nathan. How could you possibly say that we're living in an inverse time flow? Well, think about this and think from a multidimensional perspective. If you have no point of reference, you will not be able to determine if you're flowing forward in time or backward in time. The only thing you can chart is a series of events. But what if those series of events are separate from the flow of time? What if you can experience what's perceivable to be a linear time flow from 12 o'clock to midnight again, or from 12 o'clock to 6 p.m. You've got a 6-hour linear time flow. Who's to say it's flowing forward or backward, but you have no reference point? You're just going, and it doesn't reverse the order of events. What it does is it inverts our perception of them. So in other words, if the average person can leave their house and get run over by a bus as they're getting into their car. Say you step out of your house and you go to your car, or you try to cross the street to say hi to your neighbor, and a school bus runs you down. You don't feel that there's any danger coming. You just step right out and the bus runs you over, so you have no idea it's coming. in the true flow of time, in the linear, if you're dealing with linear time flow, and you're dealing with linear time flow outside of the planetary consciousness simulation, in the bigger cosmic consciousness simulation that the ETs are in, okay, you perceive time differently. It's semi-divergent, but still linear. And what you'll experience is that you'll be able to perceive an event before it happens. So you'll feel it coming. So in a normal ET civilization, if there's a school bus that's going to blast down your street and run you over, if you cross the road, let's say it's coming around a bend, you don't see it till it's too late. You're going to know that's coming. You're going to sense it. You're going to sense the danger. And not only that, you're going to know what the danger is. In our reality, in this world, in this simulation, we don't experience it until after it happens. So in other words, if you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or get a glass of water and you walk right into the leg on your bed or the corner of your dresser and you stub your toe and you fall on the floor and you're gasping for air and you think your toe's broken off, okay, you felt that after it happened. The true reality, the true nature of reality is the reversal of the time flow, because we're in an inverse. You would get up knowing you were going to stub your toe and you could move your foot out of the way. That is having control over your environment. If we were truly in charge or in control of our reality as co-creators, we would be able to feel something coming. We would have control over our reality. That's our psychic birthright. It's been taken from us. So by inverting the time flow, you fundamentally short circuit people's psychic abilities at a foundational baseline level. So now you've got the jump on them. So if you have a reverse time flow, that means if you're outside the planetary simulation and you're in an extraterrestrial civilization, even if you're here, okay, because the Atlas system knows who's who, and you're not going to be subject to the inverse time flow effect and then you have your ability to sense something coming. But the person who's in it, who's cataloged as a prisoner on this earth, they can't. So that's one of the ways, that's like the fundamental way of suppressing our consciousness is an inverse time flow effect. It isn't so much time is flowing in reverse, it's that our perception of it is inverted. So what this is doing, it's taking our true universe, the real source field, where all of these planets and moons and everything really exist, but it's a more fluid reality. It's taking our power to shape it away from us, putting us at mercy of this reality to where any number of things could happen to us. And that was done intentionally to create an environment that could be programmable so that that lack of control and those hardships and that not knowing what's going to happen next, all of those things can be utilized for enhanced soul growth or evolution if done properly with the intent of helping someone. So in other words, when you die and you go into the void, okay, the void is a transition state. The way it was supposed to work is that when you went into the void after death, the tunnel of light was supposed to route you back to your oversoul. This was like, hey, come here, everything's good. Here's a nice hug. We love you. We're sending you home. Instead, it's an entrapment system. So it's been weaponized and its purpose has been inverted. So it's a containment system that feeds off of the people in it and doesn't let them out. That's why when people come in here to do a mission and change things and try to get other souls out, they wind up getting trapped themselves.
Nate, we gotta cut it, man. We've been going 2 hours and 43 minutes. We've almost been going 3 hours. We're gonna have to do a part 2 for sure, though. This was awesome, man. This was amazing. This was really amazing. Like this was like.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was awesome, man. I can't believe you went this long. You know. It's I get like a high from this because this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, there's another image for you guys. We can talk about this next time. After the Younger Dryas event, the pyramids were weaponized and they were no longer used for the positive uses that they were intended for. They were then used for mind control. And that's why you find bodies piled up in human sacrifices that have been sacrificed to these ET gods. And this is an example of it. And I can get into, next time we'll actually talk about a memory of the Great Pyramid I have, how the shadow-free lighting, how the
the lighting was done inside the pyramids and the temples, so there's no marks from torches or lamps of any kind. They weren't using primitive light bulbs, and they weren't using like a vinegar, vinegar device where it's kind of like a potato clock where it generates electrons from acid and different things, like an electrochemical cell that makes electrons. They couldn't power a light bulb with a battery that primitive. So people who think that that's how it was done are not thinking clearly. The energy, the photonic light, and there's photonic light and non-photonic light. Spirits put out non-photonic light. It's all a scalar emission. So that's how the light was done. They were converting scalar waves to light, but we can always get to that next time. That's kind of what this talks about. And then it shows a scalar transduction nub, and it's literally sending a scalar wave output, and that represents after the enslavement took place, they repurposed the pyramids. There were no longer places of healing. They could still be used for that, but the main primary purpose was mass mind control and forcing everyone under the authority of a bunch of ET gods, so that there was a rigid hierarchical structure, worship, human sacrifice, servitude, essentially a brutal police state. And that's what we see in the latter part of the Egyptian history. So we'll get to that next time.
Yeah, dude, this was awesome. Like, people were saying, when's he coming back? Like, we'll have to just schedule something for soon, like maybe next week or something, you know, like we can do another one next week. Like, yeah, thank you to everybody who stayed with us this long. You know, we had like 70 people watching on YouTube. Now it's down to about 48, but like, you know, those 48 people stayed with us like for the whole 2 hours and 43 minutes. So like, I really appreciate it. And like all the people that are still watching on Rumble, there's still like 30 people watching on Rumble. So thank you everybody for staying with us tonight. And yeah, thank you, Nate, for taking thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you for taking up 3 hours of your time. And plus, guys, he took up 2 hours earlier to make sure this worked. We took up 2 hours to make sure this would work for you guys, or an hour. I think it took us an hour to figure this out. I know we're not that tech savvy, or, you know, but then, you know, and then 3 hours now. So you know, this was well worth it. You know, this was a good presentation.
Real quick, how do I get back to the screen where you guys can see me, or can you see me?
Let me just remove your screen share, or I'll just remove it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I just wanted to say hi to everybody so that you see me. I don't know if you saw me at all through that whole presentation, but thank you for coming. I really appreciate it, and thank you for all those people that stayed up late. Many of you probably have to work in the morning, and you're sacrificing sleep just to hear this. I really appreciate your participation. You're all great and awesome. I love all of you, and I hope to do this more and help educate people. And I'm going to be appearing on do you know what Erickson's radio station is, Rob? You remember, you know, Erickson? He was at the conference. It's, what is it? I'm trying to think. Planet Surface Radio.
Surface Planet Radio. Surface Planet Radio. Yeah.
I'm going to be. If anybody knows,
if he was in the chat tonight.
Huh?
He was in the chat tonight. Erickson, he might still be in the chat now.
Yeah, cool, because I'm going to be on his radio show tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm not going to talk so much about this subject. We're going to be talking about advanced psychotronic weapons like we talked about here. But I'm going to be going further than that. I'm going to be talking about sub-programs of Project Oblivion. And I've got to work all day tomorrow to put this together. I'm not going to have slides. It's a radio interview, but I'm going to be going by notes. So, and then when I come back here next time, if you want, we can talk about that. There's various sub-programs of Project Oblivion that deal with false twin flames, alien love bites, handlers, inadvertent handlers, where they subconsciously program like a spouse that's narcissistic. There's program names for all of these. I'm going to break this down. I'm going to talk about Project Oblivion, not just as a suppression operation, but as a false awakening that developed since the 50s and has evolved into what it is today. So it's a blanket, it's an umbrella program with many, many different sub-programs. I have at least, I think, 6 or 7 of them that focus on everything that you would find in Misha Johnson's group. So that means the alien love bites, the whole thing. It's like every one of these aspects of targeting has a program name. So we're going to go over that and the purpose of the programs and how they break down and so forth. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. It'll be a resource for anybody who's attempting to figure out what's being done to them. So I highly recommend checking that out.
Yeah. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, I have Michelle coming back on, who she said, I talked to her through text tonight. She said she's going to be interviewing soon with Don Rogers. I think she said September 18th or something like that. Yeah. Michelle does the esoteric decode. She does she'll be doing Luciferian and satanic decodes. You know, she decoded my whole city of Pittsburgh before. She's cool as hell. Michelle's awesome. You know, you'll like your interview with her and Don Rogers I think it's on the 18th. She told me you got but she's coming on my show tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern. So I don't think that'll interfere with your show. But I mean, unless you go super long again. But I mean,
I usually go 2 to 3 hours, but I'll be able to catch it and watch it before I go on with her on what's it, the After Dark show. And what's interesting about that is the other host, he's had a download interesting things involving physics in the EM universe construct. So when I kind of proposed this stuff to him and was telling him about this, I explained it to him. I'm like, look, Don, you got accurate information, but this is the other side of it. So you've got one side of the coin, I've got the other. Let's have a discussion. I don't know how we're gonna have to put our minds together and kind of figure out how this plugs together, but it'll be an interesting discussion. And so I can't wait. I always like going on his show. He's always a fun guy to talk to. He has a great sense of humor too.
He is. He's a cool guy. I like Don. Well, dude, this was awesome. Do you want to tell people where they can find you? And thanks, Nate. This was amazing.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of places right now. I do have the Planetary Consciousness Project YouTube channel. I don't have any of this new content up there. I'm going to be working on this over the next few months. So I'm probably going to be changing. I'm going to be getting rid of my Telegram group. It's too much to deal with. There's not much going on there. I got somebody spamming QAnon and political stuff right now. There's not a lot of participation. It's not really a fruitful endeavor. So I'm going to eventually get rid of that. But this coming year, I'm going to have a website where I'm going to be putting all of this information out. I'm going to be writing a book. And I'm going to be doing this stuff and breaking it down in podcasts, not just other people's podcasts, but my own. So I'm going to be doing PowerPoint presentations and videos. So if you want to go ahead and subscribe to my channel on YouTube, it's the Planetary Consciousness Project. I'm working on another channel on Rumble. I'm probably going to be calling it Project New Awakening, because that's ultimately my goal here. And that this is the counter Project Oblivion, because what's been done to us through Oblivion and other sub-programs and other programs that are similar to Oblivion is they've driven us a false awakening. So they've taken hardcore MILAB research, mixed it with the New Age, and just swept all the valuable stuff under the rug that E.V. Lorgan and others have talked about. That includes the clone, using a clone with a tether to target people. That's one of the casualties of the New Age being injected into the MILAB community. That's been completely forgotten, and that needs to be brought to the surface. And ultimately, the purpose of this is to educate people on how to counteract the targeting. You have to understand how it works before you can tell what's being done to you. So most people go through their lives, especially in this community, and they don't realize just how much of their own thought processes and emotions are actually under the control of somebody else. They think it's their own emotions and their own thoughts. Once you learn how to differentiate between the two, you can substantially reduce their effects on you. And then we can actually get a community that's cohesive and works together and doesn't fall for these deceptions and paranoia and all of the crap that goes along with it. So that's the goal. It's creating a new awakening, taking what they've done and getting rid of it and starting fresh. So that's my goal. And ultimately, the key, not just to fighting through all of this and waking up, you got to have the truth, but you got to connect with your oversoul, and that's a direct conduit to God. That's the way out of this. And we can talk about how to counteract targeting next time, because that's the key to it. You have to do the right. You got to understand the way this works. They're tricking us into creating a world that they want. They're taking our creative ability away from us and tricking us to make a world that they want for themselves to control us in. And once you realize that, and you realize that your program, MILAB program participation, and you being a prisoner on this planet, unable to leave and being in a perpetual reincarnation cycle, is all based on a principle of engineered consent. They've got to engineer consent out of you so that they can keep you here. And once you understand that and how this works, you can better fight your way out of this and work together with other people. And then we can have a mass exodus on this planet. I wish I could show you the image. I didn't see it. I got to re-upload it to my presentation, but I got a great graphic image. It's the Earth with simulation rings around it, and it's this massive exodus of souls just floating upward and exiting the simulation. It's a beautiful picture, and it says Project New Awakening. Make a great t-shirt or on a website. And that's the goal. It's, not to sit here and wait for saviors, not to wait for ETs to save us. They're going to have some role in something, but they can't fundamentally change the reality that we're in, and they can't change the way people think. In order to get out of that reality, we have to do that. And that's what Project New Awakening is about. It's the reversal of the damage that they've done to all of us.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, dude. Guess what? The Northern Lights are tonight. I'm going out to look at them right now. Jason said I should take everybody outside. I can't. I got to have some alone time. I was on for 2 hours with Robert Bitto and then 3 hours. Now I've been online 5 hours. I'm going off. I'm signing off right now, guys. I love you, Nate, though. Dude, I love you like a brother. You're awesome, man. Thank you for taking 3 hours of your night and doing this for us, dude. You're amazing.
Hey, just hang on for like a minute. I'll hold you up for a minute. I just